Chapter 91. Alto. In the upper levels of the Black Temple, within the purified area, the cry of an infant echoed. All the humans and elves waiting outside erupted in cheers, for the offspring of their leader had been born. Roger carried his son to Aurelia's bedside. Aurelia looked at her son with tenderness. Have you thought of a name for him? Alto, how about that? Of course. Aurelia looked at Roger with loving eyes. Alto, in Elvish, means fruit. Roger meant that this child was the fruit of their love, which of course made Aurelia happy. However, Aurelia's happiness came early, as Roger announced news that made her even happier. I plan to name the newly built warship Alto in commemoration of our son's birth. The reason it's called a warship and not a war vessel is that Roger's newly built ship was too enormous to be called a vessel, so Roger called it a warship. The demon hunters' successful victory over the demons proved the success of large ships with large cannons. Both Roger and others in the Alliance advocated building even larger warships to form a fleet as a weapon. Although Draenor is large, it is far smaller than Azeroth, only slightly larger than the Kingdom of Stormwind, and not even as large as the Dwarves' territory. With a powerful fleet, they could flexibly support most areas of the continent. For the remaining areas, as long as they developed an air force, the Alliance could launch rapid strikes across the entire continent. The matter of resources needed to be collected slowly. The current priority was to build this super warship. At the same time, Roger also sent the demon hunter to transport the Araco to the southernmost cape of the Spires of Iraq, where they built a camp. Although Darkweaver Scythe was more willing to stay in the shadow energy-filled Black Temple, he had to go south to reclaim his homeland. With Roger's help, the Araco spent a month building Cape Camp. Then, these Araco who could walk in the shadows began to scout the demons. Soon, they discovered a large number of demons in Bloodmane Valley. Bloodmane Valley was once the territory of the Tiger people. The Araco and the Tiger people had centuries of war, and they knew Bloodmane Valley very well. After the Araco infiltrated Bloodmane Valley, they found that the demons had built a huge camp there. After spending a lot of time, the Araco finally found a dark portal with a completed framework in a valley in Bloodmane Valley. After discovering the dark portal, Roger wanted to attack Bloodmane Valley immediately and destroy the dark portal. However, in the magical image recorded by the Araco, Roger actually discovered two huge devices. They were two metal demon head statues, but these two heads were a bit strange. They were too long from front to back, and their mouths were wide open, looking like a launcher. From the situation described by the Araco, Roger was very sure that these were two fell cannons, and their power was even greater than that of the Apex's cannons. Therefore, he had to consider it carefully. Roger suddenly thought of the Battle of Icecrown Citadel, the battle in which Illidan attacked Hellfire Citadel. Magtheridon also built two such fell cannons. He had to manipulate the destroyers to sneak into the shadows and destroy the cannons before Illidan's army could enter Hellfire Citadel. Thinking of this, Roger immediately sent someone to Talar to find Akama. However, Akama had gone to contact other Broken and had not yet returned. Nuboden brought some Broken senior officers to the Black Temple. Roger explained the situation, and Broken Colonel Talon said, "We can indeed sneak into the shadows to avoid the demon's sight, but we cannot guarantee whether we can destroy the fell cannons." "That's easy." Roger said, "You send some people to sneak into the demon camp with the Araco to study how to destroy the fell cannons. When you find a way to study, it will be time for us to attack Bloodmane Valley." At the launching ceremony of the Alto, Aurelia carried little Alto and walked onto the ship first. Roger also directed the army to board the ship, and they took the Alto south to the Spires of Iraq, heading to Cape Camp. The Araco and Broken had already figured out how to destroy the fell cannons, and Roger was preparing to launch a raid on Bloodmane Valley. The Alto sailed with the lowest energy consumption, saving the energy for the cannons as the Alliance's last guarantee. In the past 6 months, tens of thousands of demons had walked out of the dark portal in Bloodmane Valley, and Roger could not guarantee that he would win this time. He had to plan for the worst before planning for the best. Roger had to leave a way out for the Alliance. After all, the troops were limited. Moreover, his son Alto was also there. Roger had also thought about leaving Alto in the Black Temple, but he was afraid that the demons would launch a raid while the Black Temple was empty. After thinking about it, the Alto was the safest place. After all, Aurelia was there. Chapter 92. The Arathor was anchored in the sea near Cape Camp, and Roger switched to the demon hunter to land at Cape Camp. Seth and Turin were already waiting there, and they put all the information about Bloodmane Valley in front of Roger. After reading the information, Roger had some doubts, are there only less than 100,000 demons in Bloodmane Valley? Seth nodded and said, at first, we thought it was wrong, but after several reconnaissance missions, we found that the number was indeed this number. However, we found a large number of demon traces in the north of Bloodmane Valley, and they occupied the Sthek Valley, as if they were very interested in that polluted land. Sthek Valley. In our Araco legends, there are 3 gods in total. The sun goddess Rukmar, the wind serpent god Sethe, and the raven god Anzu. Rukmar bestowed wisdom on the Kalari birds, and the Araco were born. Sethe was jealous that Rukmar could fly high in the sky, so he wanted to join forces with Anzu to overthrow Rukmar, but Anzu joined forces with Rukmar to kill Sethe. Before Sethe died, he cursed this land, and this land is the Sthek Valley. Turin said, we observed the behavior of the demons and found that they are studying the curse of Sthek. According to the Araco legend, I suspect that the demons want to create a cursed weapon. As long as this cursed weapon spreads, it can pollute the earth and reduce people's abilities, so that they can invade better. When Roger heard this, he immediately thought of the scourge. If the curse of Sethe is mastered by the demons, it can completely create a disaster no less than the scourge. He called the generals over and began to assign them tasks. The southern slope of Bloodmane Valley is a position that the fell cannons cannot attack, and there are many demons wandering there. That's Sarian, you lead the army to attack here, and the Araco mages will provide you with magical support. Quickly clear the demons there and try to lure the demons in the valley out. Understood. That Sarian nodded and immediately took the coalition generals to prepare for battle. Roger looked at Seth and Turin, in addition to the Araco who go to destroy the fell cannons, send all the remaining Araco to the battlefield. The Shattered should be prepared to respond to those who destroy the fell cannons at any time. After the fell cannons are destroyed, you can retreat. You should know how to avoid the sight of the demons, right? Hearing Roger's words, the two were even more relieved. With Roger's powerful strength, their confidence doubled, guaranteed to complete the mission. If that's the case, let's set off now. The entire Cape camp began to operate, and Seth and Turin led their men to leave first and sneak into Bloodmane Valley. That Sarian began to attack, he directly launched a signal arrow, and the demon hunter took the lead in attacking. 10 Apex's cannons launched an attack on the southern side of the slope, catching the demons off guard. After a round of shooting, that Sarian led his troops to charge up the slope and launched a surprise attack on the panicked demons. Dozens of high-ranking ranger leaders commanded the coalition forces, and soon, under Thasarian's command, they killed the demons one by one. In less than half an hour, the coalition forces occupied the commanding heights on the south side of the slope. The coalition forces quickly established a defense line, and the Araco mages entered the fortifications, waiting in battle. Soon, the demons gathered. The first to attack was a group of succubi. They flew over the peaks extremely quickly and launched an attack on the coalition forces. When approaching the coalition soldiers, they would launch charm, confuse the soldiers' minds, and make them attack their companions. That Sarian was prepared, and the human soldiers controlled their charmed companions. Dozens of high-ranking rangers shot magic arrows into the sky. After the magic arrows flew into the air, they immediately transformed into countless arrows, flying towards the succubi in the sky. The succubi were caught off guard and were submerged in the rain of arrows. When dodging in panic, many succubi bumped into each other and fell from the sky. The coalition soldiers did not rush up to solve these succubi. How could these cunning demons be easily dropped on the ground? Sure enough, a large number of fellhounds and voidwalkers appeared on the mountain again, and they quickly rushed towards the coalition's defense line. If the coalition soldiers had just walked out of the defense line, they would have been submerged in the sea of demons by now. That Sarian shouted, "Magic coverage!" The mages immediately cast group spells. The Araco mages' shadow barrage constantly shuttled between the demons, killing batch after batch of demons. The coalition mages were guiding the blizzard. Although the elemental spirits of Draenor were silent, under the blessing of powerful magic equipment, the demons still felt what it was like to be ruthless. The demons fell batch after batch, and soon the arms changed. The hellfire gradually disappeared, the size of the void walkers gradually increased, and a new type of demon similar to the fellhounds appeared, Void Terror. Some fell bats also began to be mixed in with the succubi, using the cover of the succubi to launch an impact on the coalition's defense line. For a time, the coalition's defense line was in jeopardy. That Sarian was not flustered at all, obviously all of this was expected. He shot a signal arrow into the sky again, and the demon hunter launched another attack. The powerful attack of the Apex's cannons suddenly cut off the tide of the demon attack. Countless demons fell not far in front of the coalition's defense line, without even touching a single coalition soldier. Obviously, the demons of Iraq Peak did not understand the demon hunter, or they did not take the demon hunter seriously. Now they finally saw the power of the demon hunter and no longer sent out cannon fodder. The sky began to darken, and countless green meteors streaked across the sky, smashing towards the coalition's defense line and Cape Camp. Finally out! Roger smiled disdainfully. These low-level demons really didn't have brains, and they couldn't even detect such a simple trick to lure the snake out of its hole. When the Iraqo were scouting, they found that the only thing in Bloodmane Valley that would affect their destruction of the fell cannons was the Eridar mages. Since Kil'jaeden and Archimonde joined the Burning Legion, the Eridar mages have become the backbone of the Burning Legion. In terms of cunning, they are not as good as the Dreadlords, but with their powerful knowledge and numerical advantage, they have become the commanders of most armies. Unless they encounter some powerful enemy, generally they do not need the Dreadlords and Pit Lords to appear, and they can destroy a world. The Eridar mages participated in the attack and summoned a large number of hellfire. Then, the time to raid Bloodmane Valley has come. Sure enough, after a while, there were two loud noises in Bloodmane Valley, and a large amount of fell energy rose into the sky, forming two mushroom clouds. The Eridar mages were shocked when they saw the change, and they quickly commanded the demons to return for reinforcements. But someone was faster than the demons. A black shadow cut through the sky and plunged into Bloodmane Valley. The black dragon whelp hovered in the air, and the rainbow light of the dragon soul struck the dark portal. The beam above the dark portal collapsed, and the space crack closed immediately. Roger shouted loudly, "All troops attack!" Then, he raised the scepter of Sargeras, and a spell mixed with arcane and space energy smashed into the demons. Boom! A powerful arcane energy erupted, instantly killing hundreds of demons. Chapter 93. Roger was very satisfied with the effect of his spell. The ability to create such an effect was partly due to the growth of his strength. In the past 6 months at the Dark Shrine, he had been absorbing the power within the Dragon Soul every day, alternating between Life Divinity and Arcane Divinity. After the Life Divinity was strengthened, his physical fitness became stronger, and it became easier to use spells. Moreover, many skills were strengthened with the increase of Life Divinity, and of course, it also allowed him to comprehend many new skills. The same was true for Arcane Divinity, except that Arcane Divinity was more inclined towards spells. Every time he absorbed a trace of Arcane Divinity, he would either gain Arcane skill points or Arcane skills. The newly learned Fury was a skill that used Fury to fight. In the world of Warcraft, you couldn't be considered a warrior without Fury. After strengthening Berserk, Bloodlust, and Roar, he obtained the new skill Endless Fury. Endless Fury was also upgraded to the Master level, and when combined with the Guillotine skill, it was simply a one-shot kill combination. In the past 6 months, Roger had also been communicating with Alleria while coaxing the children. He obtained the Ranger's inheritance from Alleria, and the Hunter also became the Hero class Ranger. The Ranger's level wasn't very high, only level 39. There were also few Grandmaster skills, only 100 steps piercing Yang, underwater combat, and Eyes of the Eagle. Moreover, the Ranger hadn't learned any new skills. According to the Ranger's level, he was now a mid-level Ranger. But with just these 3 Grandmaster skills, almost all high-level Rangers were no match for him, and Alleria could only tie with him. This was the result of Roger not paying attention to the Ranger. If Roger valued the Ranger class, his level would at least not be lower than the Grandmaster Swordsman. Roger valued the Arcane Master the most. After half a year of continuous leveling up, the Arcane Master had long broken through the level 60 mark. After reaching level 60, it became extremely difficult to level up. After absorbing so much Arcane Divinity, Roger was only level 62 now. However, because of the large number of skill points, the Arcane Master possessed 8 legendary level skills, namely, Arcane Missiles, Arcane Hand, Arcane Intellect, Blink, Arcane Explosion, Mana Shield, Counterspell, and Breath of Life. The remaining skills were at least Master level, which overall improved the strength of the Arcane Master, including the newly learned skills Arcane Projection, Arcane Barrier, and Arcane Breath. Arcane Projection uses Arcane to create a projection to observe a very distant place on his behalf. Strengthening the projection distance, visual perception, and auditory perception allows Roger to better understand the environment in which the projection is located. Arcane Barrier uses Arcane to create a fixed barrier, mainly used to protect cities, and can defend against enemy attacks. Strengthening the firmness makes the arcane barrier more defensive, strengthening the concealment makes the arcane barrier difficult to detect, strengthening the shielding allows people outside the barrier to not perceive the situation inside the barrier. Dark Shrine and Alto were both set up with arcane barriers by Roger, but because the arcane barrier was only at the master level, Roger wasn't very relieved. Arcane Breath is a spell that uses arcane to strengthen creatures. Strengthening the strengthening ability can enhance the strengthening ability of Arcane Breath, strengthening the enlightenment can make the strengthened creature more intelligent, strengthening the shaping can promote the external changes of the strengthened creature according to the user's ideas. This skill was accidentally obtained by Roger when he was studying the fell corruption of the Broken. Although it had little effect on the Broken, it had a great effect on the Dragon Hawk. After several experiments, Roger found that this skill had a low effect on intelligent creatures, but it was extraordinary for primitive creatures. With this skill, Roger was equivalent to obtaining a part of the authority of creation, and creation was completely the domain of God. With two weak divinities and the powerful strength of the Grand Master Swordsman and the Arcane Master, Roger's strength was already comparable to a demigod. It would be difficult for Roger to create such an explosion by relying on his own strength alone. This requires talking about the Scepter of Sargeras. In the past 6 months, Roger had been constantly studying the Scepter of Sargeras. Whenever he had time, he would put on arcane intellect to test the function of the scepter, and finally discovered a usage, which was to teleport a spell to another place to use. The explosion just now was the effect caused by Roger teleporting a legendary level arcane explosion. The legendary level arcane explosion, coupled with the blessing of arcane divinity, was like an arcane bomb. Wherever Roger pointed, it was the place where the demons would be beheaded. The demons left in Bloodmane Valley, apart from some powerful Doom Guards, were all demon artificers, Morg and Ganarg, as well as the variant demon guards of both. Among these demon guards, there was also a spell-casting variant, the Fell Lord. The powerful Fell Lord withstood the tearing of the arcane explosion. His whole body was flowing with fell energy, and he launched an attack on Roger. A fell shockwave hit the black dragon whelp, and the black dragon whelp fell from the sky. Roger quickly jumped onto the pillar of the dark portal, and then used arcane hand to pull the black dragon whelp over. He poured a bottle of detoxification spring water into the black dragon whelp, and then poured life spring water into it again, which saved its little life. After putting the black dragon whelp into the magic rains to recuperate, Roger turned his gaze to the Fell Lord who was attacking him. The fell shockwave hit the pillar, and after a few hits, the pillar couldn't withstand the attack and began to collapse. Roger didn't care at all that he was sliding down with the stones, but instead cast a counterspell at the Fell Lord. The legendary level counterspell interrupted the Fell Lord's spell casting. The 190% feedback instantly engulfed the Fell Lord with fell energy. He who plays with fire gets burned. The Fell Lord was corroded by the fell energy he created, leaving only bones behind. At this time, the Eridar mages led the demon army back to Bloodmane Valley. When they saw that the dark portal had been destroyed, they were immediately furious. They commanded the Hellfire to launch an attack on Roger, wanting to drown Roger with countless Hellfire. Roger waved his scepter casually, an arcane explosion exploded in the middle of the Hellfire. Although the Hellfire had anti-magic runes on their bodies, the anti-magic runes were only for ordinary magic, and spells with divinity were not included. Arcane explosion instantly tore and destroyed hundreds of Hellfire, stunning the Eridar mages. At this moment, shouts of killing came from the mountain peak, and the allied forces launched an attack on the demons from a commanding position. Chapter 94. The Eridar mages were in the forefront, directing the Hellfires, their backs exposed to the Alliance. Rangers and mages attacked the Eridar mages, and Alliance soldiers also rushed towards them, hoping to eliminate them in one fell swoop. However, they clearly underestimated the strength of the Eridar mages. Just as all the attacks were about to hit the Eridar mages, a fell shield suddenly appeared around them. Whether it was arrows or spells, they were easily blocked by the fell shield. Compared to orc warlocks, the Eridar mages' fell shield was far more powerful. After all, they had studied fell energy for tens of thousands of years, making them many times stronger than those halfway trained orc warlocks. As Alliance soldiers rushed forward, the Eridar mages calmly raised their hands and released a wave of concussive force, sending the soldiers flying. Ah! The Alliance soldiers struggled frantically in the air, screaming in terror. The mages quickly cast slow fall spells, saving their lives. Even so, they still flew halfway down the mountain before stopping. Looking at the nearly 100-meter drop, the Alliance soldiers wiped away cold sweat, grateful to have escaped with their lives. The Eridar mage leader directed several Eridar mages to block the alliance, and once again looked towards Roger. Boom! Arcane energy with divine power instantly shattered the Eridar mages' fell shields, blowing them off balance. The Eridar mages were instantly alert and teleported to the surrounding hills. Just as they were about to observe the battlefield situation, a group of people used blink to appear beside them, stabbing their backs with the weapons in their hands. The Eridar mages hurriedly used fell shields, but this time the shields did not block the attacks. The attackers' weapons pierced through the fell shields, stabbing into their bodies and unleashing a large amount of fire damage. The Eridar mages were severely injured, and the fell energy in their bodies instinctively surged towards the attackers. The attackers had to dodge, and the Eridar mages teleported away again. After confirming their safety, they looked at these despicable attackers, who were wearing equipment with the aura of dragons. Especially their weapons, which even had anti-magic runes, a simplified version of the runes they had inscribed on the hellfires, which shouldn't have been able to break through their fell shields. What was going on? The Lothar's Sword Red Dragon squad didn't know what the Eridar mages were thinking, and blinked closer again, launching an attack on them. The Red Dragon squad was composed of the strongest members of Lothar's Sword. Roger distributed the remaining Red Dragon equipment to them, making them the strongest assault squad. Although they didn't have Alexstrasza's life blessing, Roger also used Breath of Life and Arcane Breath to strengthen their bodies, making them no weaker than B Company. But in the eyes of the Eridar mages, the Red Dragon squad was still not enough to pose a threat to them. The only threat in their eyes was Roger, who had destroyed the Dark Portal. Roger's powerful strength made the Eridar mages extremely wary, especially the spell that teleported arcane energy explosions, which made them very vigilant. But no matter how vigilant they were, it was useless, they still couldn't defend against it. A spatial rift appeared near the Eridar mages again, and the powerful arcane energy instantly shattered their fell shields, throwing them off balance. The Red Dragon squad, wearing anti-magic equipment, was unaffected and attacked the Eridar mages. The Eridar mages who could cast spells quickly teleported away again, but those who were slower to cast spells were directly interrupted by the Red Dragon squad and beaten to the ground. After the tall Eridar mages fell, the Red Dragon squad immediately launched attacks on their vital points, and soon an Eridar mage was beaten to death. The other Eridar mages, seeing this situation, knew that they had to stop Roger from casting spells. Otherwise, they would all be killed by Roger and the Red Dragon squad. They teleported near Roger one after another, preparing to gang up on him. Although they were not very good at close combat, with their huge bodies 3 times taller than Roger, they could crush him to death even if they just piled on top of him. Moreover, Roger, as a mage, might not be good at close combat either, they would definitely have the upper hand in a noob fight. The idea was correct, but the thinking was too naive. Roger was a little surprised. Because the Eridar mages could teleport, he hadn't considered close combat, but chose to play support, slowly grinding them to death. But since they were offering themselves up, how could Roger be polite? He directly took out the anti-magic sword, starting with Endless Rage, then connecting to Blade Storm. The anti-magic sword stirred up a powerful whirlwind, directly enveloping the Eridar mages. The gale tore at their bodies, creating wounds and even tearing off the arms of some Eridar mages. The Eridar mages were horrified and hurriedly used teleportation spells to try to escape this hell. But the light of the teleportation spells had just lit up when it immediately went out, they couldn't use spells at all. The domain of Blade Storm was actually anti-magic. This was impossible. The Eridar mages watched as the whirlwind slowly tore their bodies to pieces. They couldn't understand why they couldn't use teleportation spells. Even if it was because of the anti-magic sword, the anti-magic runes on that black sword were only the lowest level, why would they disable their spells? Why was this? They couldn't figure it out even if they racked their brains. The anti-magic runes had been strengthened and were not weaker than the real anti-magic runes they used. Perhaps spells with divine power couldn't be disabled, but it was more than enough to deal with them. The death of the Eridar mages caused the demons to lose their courage to resist. Although they could be resurrected in the twisting nether, they didn't want to die again. The demons fled north, and the alliance occupied Bloodmane Valley. Seth led the Araco over. "General Rogers, are we going to attack Skyreach next?" Roger signaled him to be calm. "We will definitely take back Skyreach, but currently we should pay more attention to the demons' movements. There are still tens of thousands of demons in the Eric Mountains, and we must clear them out completely before we can completely recover this place. Otherwise, the Araco alone cannot defend Skirich. Seth was a little embarrassed, but Spires of Arak has always been our forbidden area, full of deadly curses. Then completely solve the curse, Roger said decisively. Seth didn't expect Roger to choose this way, but he was also infected by Roger's determination. I will send someone to contact the Raven God now. He devoured Scthe's body back then, and no one knows Scthe's curse better than him. Anzu? Roger raised his eyebrows. He had long wanted to meet this only demigod of Draenor. Chapter 95. Draenor once had 3 demigods, Rukmar, Sethe, and Anzu. Of these, only Anzu survived, and he was afflicted with Sthe's curse, greatly diminishing his power. The lack of a demigod's protection, coupled with infighting among the Araco themselves, led to the Araco's current plight. The Araco are now divided into 2 groups, one that followed Anzu to Achinedown, and the other, the outcast Araco, residing in Spires of Arak. They are all Araco exiles whose wings were lost to the curse of Sthek Hollow. Under Anzu's leadership, the Araco of Achinedown have managed to retain their sanity. However, the outcast Araco have not been so fortunate, and they ferociously attack any living creature that enters their territory. This clearly demonstrates the difference that a demigod's protection can make. The Alliance rested in Bloodmane Valley for a few days, collecting all the spoils onto the Alto. Although only powerful demons possess equipment, the demons' corpses themselves are a resource. Even imps can have their faint magical essence extracted. With these resources, the Acant Crystal Workshop was reactivated and will soon have enough energy to power hundreds of Apex's cannons. Based on the Araco's reconnaissance, Roger led the Alliance through Zexrus to attack the demons in Sthek Hollow. The demons did not resist but retreated into the depths of Sthek Hollow. Demons are also adept at wielding curses, and Sthe's curse has little effect on them. On the other hand, the humans, elves, and broken within the Alliance, like the Araco, cannot withstand Sthe's curse at all. The demons retreated to use Sthe's curse to halt the Alliance's advance, allowing them to complete their remaining research. Roger personally examined Sthe's curse and found it to be extremely potent. Even with the enlightenment of arcane wisdom, he could not resolve the curse here in a short time. The Araco constructed a massive summoning circle within the camp. With dozens of Araco casting spells, a gigantic raven appeared within the circle. Seth respectfully said to the raven, "Revered Raven God, allow me to introduce our ally." Anzu, tormented by Sthe's curse, was already weak and powerless, having long lost the grandeur of the Raven God. He was clearly aware of his condition and did not put on airs as the Raven God. However, he was astonished the moment he saw Roger. "I never imagined that our ally would be a demigod." "A demigod?" Everyone in the camp was astonished, whether Araco or Alliance soldiers. They never imagined that Roger, who had led them to countless victories, would be a demigod. Roger chuckled. "I only came into contact with divinity by chance." The camp erupted in excitement. Clearly, Roger's words confirmed Anzu's guess. The Alliance soldiers cheered even more, as having a demigod leading them in another world was the greatest encouragement. Anzu took a deep look at Roger, discerning Roger's hidden strength. He did not expose it, because it meant that Roger was a clever person who knew how to survive longer. Cooperating with such a demigod would be a good thing for both him and the Araco. Sthek Hollow. "I never thought I would return here." Anzu recalled, Sethe is the god of wind serpents, and he excels in shadow magic. His curse also originates from shadow magic. This shadow energy, mixed with wind serpent venom, is the main component of the curse. If you want to resolve Sthe's curse, you must first extract the shadow energy and then remove the wind serpent venom. Roger nodded slightly, which was similar to what he had expected. However, even with a direction, there were still many difficulties in dispelling the curse. Fortunately, he had also invited another clever person. The light of a teleportation spell appeared, and a mage holding a chicken leg staff appeared before everyone. Kadger became wary upon seeing Anzu's enormous body. He sensed a strong aura of darkness emanating from Anzu and even suspected that Roger intended to deal with him. If Roger knew what Kadger was thinking, he would definitely roll his eyes and tell him, "Need to find helpers to deal with you? You really think highly of yourself." Although their relationship was not harmonious, Roger was very certain of Kadger's talent. Without obtaining the powerful strength of a guardian, yet able to become a new generation guardian through his own power, Roger admired Kadger's intelligence. In the camp, the three began to study ways to separate Sthe's curse. Kadger tried using Dispel Curse, but it had little effect. However, he did not give up. If we can find a magical item that can absorb shadow energy, we might be able to separate the shadow energy and win serpent venom. Anzu said, there are very few magical items that can absorb shadow energy. I can introduce the shadow energy into the shadow plane, but it requires casting time. Kadger shook his head. No, separating shadow energy and win serpent venom is an instantaneous matter. If the shadow energy cannot be separated in time, the curse will combine the shadow energy and win serpent venom again. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Roger suddenly thought of an object. Do you think this crystal will work? Kadger looked at the crystal Roger took out and asked in surprise, what kind of crystal is this? It actually possesses rich shadow energy. Anzu swallowed, clearly attracted by the pure shadow energy contained within the crystal. This is a fragment of the Dark Star. Roger said. Kadger and Anzu both knew about the Dark Star and instantly dispelled the urge to study it. If they did, it would inevitably cause dissatisfaction among the Drania, and even many Broken would become hostile to them. Whether Drania or Broken, they were now allies, and they would not do such an irrational thing. Roger did not have this concern. He never relied on the Drania and Broken, so naturally he did not need to care about their thoughts. He collected all the fragments of the Dark Star because he wanted to study the principle of the Naru, why they could transform between holy light and shadow, and why they became a kind of creature. The experiment began again. Kadger used Dispel Curse, Roger immediately used the Dark Star fragment to absorb shadow energy, and Anzu blew away the Wind Serpent Venom. When the Wind Serpent Venom dissipated into the air, the three confirmed that they had succeeded. Then, according to this principle, a magical device was created and placed into a lake full of curses. The device was activated, and the curses around the lake concentrated towards the lake, while the curses in the lake began to slowly dissipate. After a day, only Wind Serpent Venom remained in the lake. Roger took out the device and poured a large bucket of detoxifying spring water into it, and the lake water gradually became clear. Chapter 96. Anzu probed into the lake and said with delight, it's turned into normal water. Kadger was filled with relief. Scth's curse was indeed astonishing. If it were exploited by demons, it might very well brew a world-class disaster. It seemed that Roger hadn't been lying to him. He had been a bit petty to judge a gentleman's heart with his own mean measure. Roger, however, wasn't optimistic. Instead, he was somewhat worried. There are countless small lakes like this in spires of Iraq. Purifying them bit by bit, I don't know how long we'll have to wait. The demons have retreated to the depths of the valley, surely because they've reached the final stages of their research. I wonder if we can make it in time. Kadger said, you should still have many Dark Star fragments. I'll make a few more extraction devices, and that will speed things up a lot. Anzu also said, we need some eyes and ears. There are many colliery birds in the spires of Iraq. Perhaps you can have the elves tame them, rebuild the air force, and do reconnaissance work. That's all we can do. The three of them split up. Kadger went to manufacture extraction devices, Anzu went to teach the elves how to tame colliery birds, and Roger continued to purify Scth's curse. Scth's curse was too dangerous, and Roger couldn't guarantee his own safety. Otherwise, he would have directly charged into the demon's hiding place, and a dragon soul blast would have taken care of them. He was now a high-ranking general, no longer the low-ranking officer he used to be. Moreover, he was married with children, and he had to abandon reckless bravery. Unless it was a critical moment, there was no need for him to risk his life. However, Roger still took extra precautions. He had the Iraqo detour to the Howling Crag in the north to establish an outpost there and observe whether any demons were leaving spires of Iraq. Seth not only had the Iraqo establish outposts at the Howling Crag but also sent Iraqo to track demons at Skirich, the Winding Mire, and Axifal. The Iraqo were eager to return to Skirich and spontaneously began to deal with the demons. Some Iraqo organized demon hunting squads and began to clear out weaker demons. They were proficient in shadow magic, and when they encountered powerful demons, they would slip into the shadows and conduct guerrilla warfare near Skirich. Having been in contact with the Alliance forces for a long time, these Iraqo had also learned some of the Alliance's combat methods. Although they had only learned the basics, they had learned one truth, which was that preserving themselves was equivalent to striking the enemy. They never fought the demons head-on. If they could win, they would fight, if they couldn't, they would run. They would ambush if they could, and they would never attack head-on. They would sabotage if they could, and they would never launch a strong attack. The demons were harassed beyond endurance. Without the command of Eridar sorcerers, these demons, whose heads were full of muscles, only knew how to fight head-on. They were the Burning Legion's cannon fodder, and countless years of using human wave tactics had meant they had never studied other tactics. Although many demons were inherently cunning, there was still a difference between cunning and tactical thinking. As Kadger manufactured extraction devices, Roger's purification speed also increased. It went from 1 lake a day to 5 or 6 lakes a day. It wasn't that there were no more extraction devices, but that the fastest speed could only reach that point. The Araco at Howling Crag sent a message that an Eridar sorcerer was leading a squad of powerful Doomguards out of Spires of Arak, heading to Skeddies. Roger immediately had a bad feeling. Kadger said, "You continue to purify the curse here, and I'll go take a look." Roger nodded. Although Kadger wasn't a demigod, his strength was still very strong. Just going to do some reconnaissance was no problem at all. Following the Araco's guidance, Kadger arrived at Skeddies and found it desolate, filled with curses everywhere. The Araco who originally lived there lay scattered on the ground, seemingly lifeless. In the midst of the curse, some demons were checking on the Araco's condition. The Eridar sorcerer carried a large potion bottle, which should have contained the curse. After completing the record, the Eridar sorcerer immediately led the Doomguards back to Spires of Arak. Kadger didn't act rashly but collected some of the curse and returned to the Sthek camp. Upon arriving at the camp, the three gathered together again and began to study the differences between the curse used by the demons and Scthe's curse. As soon as the bottle was opened, the curse floated towards the three of them like a living thing. Kadger quickly used magic to isolate the curse. Roger used Arcane Hand to gather the curse floating towards him and observed it from the outside. Ansu allowed the curse to invade his body and felt its internal structure. It has strong replicability and infectivity. Ansu's expression changed drastically. He quickly used shadow power to restrain the curse, preventing it from spreading in his body. If the curse was allowed to spread, the Scthe's curse remaining in his body would be triggered, and not only would he lose his life, but the curse would cover the entire Spires of Arak. Roger's expression was serious. There's no change in external observation. The demons must have added something to it, allowing the curse to reproduce through flesh and blood. This can no longer be considered a curse, it's a plague. But they're hiding in the depths of the valley. How can we find them? Ansu asked. Perhaps, we can lift the curse of the entire valley at once, Kadger said. But this requires the power of the Staff of Sargeras and the Dragon's Soul. Roger nodded. No problem, I'll cooperate with you. Soon, the three chose a relatively large lake. Kadger raised a dish and lifted the extraction device containing all the dark star fragments into the sky. Roger immediately used the Staff of Sargeras to open countless small spatial rifts, covering the entire valley. Then he used the power of the Dragon Soul to activate the extraction device, and countless shadow energies poured through the spatial rifts towards the extraction device. The demons discovered the three's intention and immediately rushed towards them, wanting to stop Kadger and Roger from casting their spells. But before they could arrive, they were stopped by Ansu. Although plagued by the curse, Ansu was still a demigod, with formidable strength. Moreover, here he could use shadow energy without restraint and allow Scthe's curse to pour out. This was what the three had agreed on, to solve Sthek Hollow's curse while also solving the curse on Ansu's body. With his powerful shadow power and the power of the curse, Ansu alone blocked the demon's attack, ensuring the spell's progress. Countless shadow energies poured into the extraction device, and the dark star inside began to move rapidly. Boom! With a loud noise, the extraction device was blown to pieces. The three immediately changed their expressions. Without the extraction device, they would not be able to complete the spell. The demons were overjoyed, not expecting such an unexpected surprise. Just then, the explosion mist dissipated, and the high-speed rotating dark star fragments appeared before everyone's eyes, slowly piecing themselves together. The dark star was resurrected. Chapter 97. Roger and Kadger looked at each other. The resurrection of the Dark Star was beyond their expectations. However, they were not afraid, they were both people who had faced Deathwing directly. The Dark Star was undoubtedly much weaker than Deathwing. Especially Roger, if he could destroy the Dark Star once, he could destroy it twice. He raised the Dragon Soul, wanting to control the Dark Star again. A complete Dark Star should be able to absorb shadow energy more quickly. Just then, the Dark Star suddenly spoke, a woman's voice coming from within, Rogers Kishon, Orc Slayer, you don't have to treat me as an enemy, I will help you destroy these demons. Immediately, countless shadow energies erupted from the Dark Star, bombarding the demons. Those powerful Doom Guards were utterly defenseless, torn to pieces by the shadow energy. The fell energy remaining on their bodies splashed into the lake, but was quickly devoured by the shadow energy and Seth's curse. Roger raised an eyebrow, the resurrected Dark Star was a bit too powerful. Ansu and Kadger also became vigilant, they also realized the threat of the Dark Star. The Dark Star did not attack the three, but descended from the sky. It floated in front of Roger. Rogers, although you once killed me, I still want to thank you for giving me new life. Roger asked with a smile that wasn't a smile, how do you know my name? The Dark Star paused for a moment, then said, I bring Elun's greetings, Rogers. Elun. Exactly. The Dark Star said, the Naru and Elun have a close relationship. We originally possessed both light and dark forms, but due to a programming error, when the light transforms into the dark state, we will lose consciousness. And just now I awakened the consciousness of the dark state, becoming the first Dark Naru in the world. My name is Kara. Dark Naru? A close relationship with Elun? Ansel looked at the other two inexplicably, he felt unfamiliar with all of this, not knowing what Kara was talking about. Kadger wasn't much better either. Isn't Elun a deity worshipped by the elves? How could she be connected to the Naru of Draenor? Could it be that deities can cultivate believers across worlds? Roger roughly guessed the reason. According to the game's plot, Elun should be an eternal one, she and the Winter Queen, the ruler of Ardenweald, are sisters. But a long time ago, she left the Shadowlands, and even guarded Azeroth's world soul together with the Pantheon. From the Pillar of Creation, Elun's tears, it can be seen that Elun had already arrived in Azeroth when the Titans transformed the world. Roger believes that the Pantheon set up a double insurance for Azeroth, ostensibly setting up the Guardian Dragons, but secretly arranging for Elun to supervise. As for why Elun has never appeared, only the Blizzard writers know what's going on. As for the relationship between the Naru and Elun, there is another rumor, that Elun created the Naru. Although it's a bit unreliable, Elun's priests can use both the power of the stars and holy light energy. However, Elun is also the moon goddess in the mythology of the Night Elves, skilled in shadow energy, and even strengthened Tyrande into the Night Warrior. To say that there is no connection between the Naru and Elun is really unbelievable, but creating the Naru is a bit far-fetched. It's all up to the Blizzard writers to choose what's true and what's false, but for Roger, this is crucial. It concerns Roger's judgment of Elun, and a mistake could be fatal. Kara said, whether I am in light or dark form, it is my mission to fight against the Burning Legion. Rogers, from now on I will follow your command and help you fight against the Burning Legion. Although Ansu, whose curse was completely removed, was still very weak, his strength had recovered greatly. He spread his wings and soared into the sky. After thousands of years, he finally regained his ability to fly. When the Arako saw Ansu constantly flying in the sky, they immediately worshipped him and constantly prayed for Ansu to also remove their curse, so that they could also regain their ability to fly. Ansu awkwardly landed in front of the Arako, unable to bring himself to tell them, "You're asking the wrong person." Fortunately, Roger arrived with Kara, helping him out of the awkward situation. Kara repeated her old trick, stripping the shadow energy from the curse on the Arako, and Roger had the Arako drink the detoxifying spring water. After the curse was lifted, the Arako did indeed regain their ability to fly. However, they also lost their original bright feathers, all turning into crow-like black and grey feathers. Even so, the Arako were overjoyed and wept. After so many years of exile, they could finally return to the sky. Seth knelt in front of Roger, "Great demigod, from now on the Arako will be loyal to you." Ansu felt a little jealous seeing this scene, but he didn't say anything. Roger not only redeemed the Arako, but also redeemed him. Even if he didn't pledge allegiance to Roger like Kara, he wouldn't repay kindness with hatred. Seth, who had just stood up, saw Ansu's uncertain face and felt a little uneasy. The Raven God shouldn't hold a grudge against his actions just now, right? Ansu saw Seth discover his entanglement and immediately became angry. He glared at Seth, then said, "Now that the curse has been lifted, Seth, you immediately lead the army to retake Skirich." "Yes, sir." Seth didn't dare to object in any way, and quickly took his orders and left. At the same time, he was secretly relieved that Ansu hadn't given him a mission that was sure to end in death, otherwise he would really have defected to Roger's command. After Spires of Iraq was purified, it immediately became a treasure land. There was plenty of water, and the purified lakes were all water resources, which was great news for the barren drainer. Thousands of years of curse had caused the soil here to have a lot of decay. After being purified, the decayed land immediately turned into humus soil. Grabbing a handful of black soil, it seemed like you could squeeze oil out of it, and fertile soil could grow grain if you scattered seeds on it. This place is simply a combination of the land of abundance and the great northern wilderness. This land must be in my hands. Roger thought in his heart. Chapter 98. Ansu, I want to plant food in the Shat-Taith Valley as a logistics base for the Allied forces. Hearing Roger's words, Ansu felt a little unhappy. After all, Roger had previously said that he would help the Araco reclaim Araco Peak, which had already legally recognized the Araco's rule over Araco Peak. Now, he wants to occupy Shat-Taith Valley again. Does he want to deny the previous decision? Roger said, in exchange, the Allied forces will help you recover Skirich, open the road to Auchindown, and strive for a place for the Araco in the Alliance. These words made Ansu's heart flutter. The Araco are on the verge of extinction and it is difficult to face the threat of demons alone. Now, the Araco are only cooperating with Roger, and have not been recognized by other generals of the Allied forces, nor have they been recognized by the Drania. Even because they occupy an area of Auchindown, the relationship between the Araco and the Drania is not very good. If Roger can really win a place for the Araco, giving up Shat-Taith Valley is not impossible. Seeing Ansu's interest, Roger added another bargaining chip: we can jointly study Apex's crystals with the Araco and share the knowledge within the crystals. The Araco had long inquired that Roger had a large number of Apex's crystals and had been coveting them. Ansu also yearned for this knowledge. The Apex's civilization grew under the protection of Rukmar, and the Apex's civilization carried his longing for Rukmar. Ansu loves Rukmar, a secret that even the Araco do not know. I hope to confirm the status of the Araco as soon as possible. Of course. Roger said, I will contact the senior generals of the Allied forces to hold an alliance conference. It just so happens that I am returning to Honorhold. I will notify Turalion and Kajer. Kajer approved of using Shat-Taith Valley as a logistics base for the Allied forces. In the resource-poor drainer, a logistics base that can provide various resources will allow the Allied forces to exert stronger combat capabilities. However, there are only 2 mountain roads in and out of Shat-Taith Valley, making it a bit difficult to transport supplies. Roger had noticed this: at the estuary of the Southeast River, there is a mountain pass, only a dilapidated spore forest. As long as that place is cleared, a seaport can be built near the estuary. With a seaport, supplies can be transported to all parts of Draenor. After Kajer confirmed this, he bid farewell and left. Roger led the Allied soldiers to begin cultivating Shat-Taith Valley. The Demon Slayer brought back a large number of seeds from Talater, and after planting them, they were ripened using the breath of life, and a large amount of food could be harvested in a month. Of course, Roger also fulfilled his promise to Ansu. That Sala led the Rangers and the Swords of Lothar to help the Araco clear the demons. The powerful demons had already been cleared, and clearing the remaining demons was only a matter of time. Spires of Iraq and Tanglewood Copse quickly returned to the control of the Araco. Only Skirich encountered resistance from the demons. After the demon army was defeated, a large number of Morg and Ganarg gathered at Skirich. They repaired the Araco's remaining defensive weapons, blocking the Araco's attack. Ansu and Kala could only personally take the field. These 2 demigod-level powerhouses quickly broke through the demons' defenses. Especially Kala, constantly releasing dense shadow energy, easily tearing apart the demons' bodies. This dark Nara not only changed its state to darkness, but even its mentality became much darker. Every demon was inevitably reduced to ashes, leaving no whole body. The Araco felt disgusted when they saw the battlefield created by Kala. After the Araco recovered Skirich, they continued to recover Arakraz to the north, preparing to open the road to Auchindown. Ansu and Kala then went to Skedis to clear this Thek plague there. With the experience of clearing Shat-Taith Valley, the 2 cooperated tacitly. Although the speed was a bit slow, the environment of Skedis was gradually improving. After the road was cleared, Seth prepared to take the Araco of Auchindown back to Skirich. However, when they arrived at Auchindown, they found the Araco confronting the Drania. Since recovering Shatrath, although the Drania still hated the Araco, they chose to endure it. The Araco also knew that this was because of Roger and the Allied forces. so they did not challenge the Drania's patience, and the two sides temporarily reached a tacit understanding. But Ikis flatly refused Seth's kindness, even saying that Seth had betrayed the Arako, and attacked him. Seth was injured and escaped by entering the shadows. He contacted Ansu, and after Ansu found out, he immediately went to Shinedown with Kala. Ansu subdued Ikis and took him back to Skirich. But Kala's appearance made the Drania feel terrified. But when they discovered that Kala had regained consciousness, they were immediately ecstatic. They did not care whether Kala used the light or the shadow, they still worshipped Kala. The Drania of Shinedown are different from those of Shatrath. In order to study how to restore the Nara to consciousness, they abandoned the light and embraced the shadow. Not long ago, the Drania found the lost refuge of Telredder and successfully brought back the Drania there. Now, the one who presides over the overall situation in Shatrath is not High Exarch Aurelius, but Prophet Velan. Although Velan recognized all of Aurelius' decisions, the situation in Shatrath still worried the Allied forces. This is also one of the reasons why Roger wanted to hold an alliance conference. He needed to determine the rights of the entire alliance to avoid accidents. The news of Kala's appearance in Shinedown quickly spread to Shatrath, and Prophet Velan rushed to Shinedown to meet Kala. After talking with Kala, he also agreed to participate in the alliance conference. After the leaders of all parties were determined, the matter of the alliance conference was decided in this way, and the location was placed into Rim. Chapter 99. Telar, once a Drania town, is now the home of the Broken. The reason for choosing this place as the venue for the alliance conference was not to discuss the Drania. On the contrary, this location was proposed by Velan himself, who wanted to take advantage of the alliance conference to communicate well with the Broken. He expressed his apologies to Akama and others and invited them to return to Shatrath. However, Akama refused. Even if they returned to Shatrath now, they would still be unable to avoid discrimination. Moreover, they had already seen the hope of restoring their appearance with Roger. 20 years of service was nothing to them, whose lifespans were hundreds or even thousands of years. Akama's refusal made Velan even more interested in Roger. A human who could command Kara and make Akama refuse to return to Shatrath must have something extraordinary about him. Soon, he met Roger. He immediately saw Roger's strength and discovered that Roger was very popular among the coalition forces. If he hadn't known in advance that the leader of the coalition forces was Turalion, he might have thought that Roger was the supreme commander of the coalition forces. The meeting began, and Roger remained silent. Turalion spoke on behalf of the coalition forces. During the negotiations, everyone argued fiercely because every compromise would result in a great loss of interest. No one wanted to suffer losses, and the Drania were even more unwilling. Velan's return greatly increased the strength of the Drania, and their voice naturally became louder. The Arako, having been freed from the curse, naturally wanted more benefits. The coalition forces were even more so. Turalion, who came from a noble background, had been exposed to politics since he was a child. Moreover, the coalition forces he represented were composed of multiple forces, and he had to fight for the interests of these forces. Under such circumstances, the Alliance Conference argued for 3 days without reaching a perfect solution. Seeing the stalemate, Roger said, "I have a suggestion. Since we are forming an alliance, we must deal with common enemies. Currently, the enemies we know are the Burning Legion, orcs, and ogres. We can make arrangements based on the situation of these enemies. Many places require our joint management. We might as well designate these places as jointly managed areas, turning them into places for us to cooperate in combat and exchange ideas. We have many races, and each should have its own main city. For the Drania, it is Shatrath, for the Arako, it is Skirich, and the Black Temple will serve as the main city of the previous coalition forces. Of course, since the Black Temple previously belonged to the Drania, as compensation and as a condition for General Dithremar to garrison Shatrath, we will cede some jurisdiction over the Black Temple, allowing Kara to lead some Drania to be stationed there. Given the agreement between me and the Broken, Kara and others can only reside in the Black Temple for 10 years. If I cannot fulfill my promise to the Broken, the Black Temple will belong to the Broken. At that time, if the Drania want to continue staying in the Black Temple, they will need to negotiate with the Broken." Ansu had no objection to this, as the agreement had little impact on the Arako. Velan did not refuse either. Although the Black Temple was built by the Drania, he also knew that the coalition forces would not hand over the Black Temple. As for Kara being stationed in the Black Temple, Velan also agreed. Although Kara had regained consciousness, she had become a dark Naru after all. Until she returned to her holy light state, she was likely to be rejected by the Drania. Her presence in the Black Temple could both assert the Drania's ownership of the Black Temple and take care of the broken, preventing them from being deceived by Roger. Seeing that no one objected, Roger continued, "We have 5 races: humans, dwarves, elves, Drania, and Araco. Each race can control 2 strongholds the size of small towns. Given the special circumstances of the broken, Telar will be given as a stronghold for the broken." Everyone looked at Velan, who nodded and said, "The Drania choose Telredder and Down as strongholds." Anso also said, "The Araco choose Skedis and Southport." The Araco had a small population, so Anso's choice was somewhat conservative. Turalion said, "The humans choose Honorhold as a stronghold. The other stronghold will be built later." The dwarves and elves had small populations and did not choose existing strongholds, also opting to build later. This item also passed smoothly. Roger continued, "The remaining strongholds will become jointly managed strongholds. Because of the need for combat, we need to designate several places as logistics bases. Currently, the spires of Iraq can provide food, and the Black Temple and Talar can provide wood. The area near Honorhold has mineral resources and can provide metal," Turalion said. Anso also said, "There are also many mineral resources around Skirich, but miners are needed to extract them." "The Drania can provide miners," Velan said. "In addition to miners, the Drania can also provide other craftsmen to help build strongholds and workshops." Finally, Roger said, "For ease of command, we need to reach an agreement. When fighting in the main cities and respective strongholds, we must obey the highest commander of the main city and stronghold. If fighting in jointly managed areas, then obey the person with the higher military rank. Of course, the leaders of the various forces are not included in this. Moreover, we need to create a unified military rank table so that officers and soldiers can be familiar with each other's organizational structure." Everyone nodded and approved of this suggestion. After its establishment, the entire alliance quickly integrated into a huge war machine. With sufficient material support, the army gradually became stronger, and alliance scouts began to enter Blade's Edge Mountains, Frostfire Ridge, Zongarmersh, Nagrand, and Farallon. The news that came back was not good. Orcs, ogres, and demons were all gathering their armies. Of course, there was also good news. The demons in Nagrand were being fiercely resisted by the ogres and orcs, and had been wandering in western Nagrand, unable to cross the line of the Warmal, Haylat, and Oshagun. The dark portal in Nagrand was near Hymal, practically a thorn in the ogres' side, and the ogres wanted to close the dark portal more than anyone else. Haylat was where the orcs isolated the sick, and Gromash's son was there, so Grommash had been leading the Warsong clan to resist the invasion of the demons. Although he had listened to Kargatha's advice and summoned the other clans, he had no time to serve as Warkif. Without Gromash's leadership, the orcs could only huddle in Hellfire Citadel, not daring to take a step out. This also gave the alliance an opportunity to attack. Chapter 100. The grain in Zethgor Valley ripened, and it was continuously transported to the alliance's strongholds by sea and land routes. The people of the alliance finally didn't have to eat magic bread again, nor did they have to suffer from hunger. After a full meal, the alliance army, united as one, began to gather towards Honorhold. For a time, Honorhold was garrisoned by as many as 5,000 troops. Although it was far less than in Azeroth, this was already the largest number of people the alliance could muster. In the sparsely populated Draenor, every soldier was a precious resource. If it weren't for Velan bringing back tens of thousands of people, the alliance would have been doing well to gather 3,000 people. Although everyone wanted to rest and recuperate for a while, now was the best opportunity to attack Hellfire Citadel. If they waited for Grommash to lead the Horde army back to Hellfire Peninsula, it would be much more difficult to capture this fortress, and who knows how many more people would die. The last attack left a deep impression on Kargath, and coupled with the fact that he knew his strength was far inferior to the alliance, he was very cautious in his defense. Any slight disturbance at Honorhold would put Hellfire Citadel on full alert. Roger simply sent a Colliery Knight to scout, and they were met with a large-scale attack by the orcs, with hundreds of ballistae firing simultaneously. If the Colliery Knight hadn't flown so high, they would have been drowned in the rain of arrows. The orcs' tense nerves gave Roger an opportunity. He discussed it with Turalion, and then sent people to harass Hellfire Citadel every day. They were digging tunnels every day, and looking for an opportunity to let the orcs discover them. Sure enough, Kargath fell for it, no longer paying attention to the harassing troops, but instead focusing on the tunnels. Then, Roger disguised himself as a colliery knight and pretended to accidentally fly over the fortress. Ballista bolts shot out, and Roger deliberately let the colliery get hit, falling from the sky without any protection. The orcs thought they had killed Roger, until a patrol of orcs found only the colliery's corpse in an alley, and they realized they had been tricked. But at this time, Roger had already touched the gate, using Windwalk to ambush the orcs guarding the gate, and Whirlwind took away the lives of all the orcs in one fell swoop. The allied forces quickly occupied most of the fortress, and it would be easy to slowly eliminate the remaining orcs. Roger also found the black dragon whelp that he had previously imprisoned in Hellfire Citadel. Kargath was afraid of Deathwing's power and did not kill him. However, Kargath did not let him go either, obviously harboring some intentions. However, no matter what Kargath's tricks were, they could no longer be realized. When the black dragon whelp saw Roger, he still wanted to resist. But Roger, whose strength was now completely different, subdued him easily. With the magic reins, Roger now had a pair of black dragons. Coincidentally, these two black dragons were male and female, and although they were siblings, Roger didn't mind the incestuous relationship between them. Roger's morality was to restrain humans, not black dragons. As long as he returned to the Black Temple, Roger would begin to study the black dragons, breeding mounts while also studying the influence of the old gods on their minds. Even after becoming a demigod, Roger's knowledge of the soul was still very shallow. Mainly, he didn't find the notes of the orc warlocks on necromancy when he killed them. Just as Roger was about to say goodbye to Turalion, a wave of fell energy suddenly appeared from the throne of Kil'jaeden in the north, rushing down towards Hellfire Citadel. The fell wave followed the previous fell river, slamming heavily against the walls of Hellfire Citadel. The walls rose with a corrosive disgust, the stones began to soften, and under the repeated pounding of the fell wave, the walls finally couldn't hold on and collapsed with a bang. A large amount of fell energy poured into Hellfire Citadel from the breach, rushing towards the allied forces. Retreat! Turalion ordered loudly, but it was too late, the fell energy had already rushed to the front, and was about to engulf the allied forces. Whoosh! At this critical moment, a figure flashed to the front of the allied forces, holding the staff of Sargeras high in his hand, and slamming it hard on the ground. A huge spatial rift appeared in front of the allied forces, and the fell energy poured into an unknown space. But opening such a huge spatial rift was too much for Roger to bear, and he had to use the power of the dragon soul to support the consumption of the spatial rift. Retreat quickly! Turalion didn't know how long Roger could last, but leaving earlier would reduce the burden on Roger. The allied forces did their best, those who could retreat outside the fortress retreated outside, and those who couldn't went directly to the walls. Soon, Roger was starting to lose his grip. Kadger appeared in front of Roger, holding the Eye of Dalaran in one hand and the Staff of Sargeras in the other, and the spatial rift stabilized again. The powerful spatial rift not only absorbed the fell energy, but also tore open the entire earth, cutting Hellfire Citadel in half with a huge gully. The earth trembled again, and the spatial rift in the sky increased again. Kadger quickly said, "We must close it." Roger nodded, stopping the flow of energy to the spatial rift. The fell energy poured into the gully, quickly filling it, and continued to pour towards the two of them. The two teleported away, looking in the direction from which the fell energy was coming. A large group of demons rushed along the fell river, and among these demons, a huge figure slowly emerged. It was Magtheridon, who had been missing for half a year. Magtheridon stepped on the fell energy and walked to the side of the gully. His huge body squeezed many demons into the gully. These little demons fell into the fell energy and were quickly corroded until only bones remained, then slowly sank to the bottom, and finally nothing was left. Roar, roar, roar! Magtheridon laughed triumphantly. He was very satisfied with the scene before him. Fighting Roger head-on was the wrong choice. Using fell energy to corrupt the entire planet was the right way to do it. Mortals! I admire your strength. Pledging allegiance to the Burning Legion is your only way out. Otherwise, I will destroy this planet, and you will all die here. Looking at Magtheridon's arrogant appearance, Roger was furious. He raised the dragon soul, wanting to give Magtheridon a shot. But the dragon soul didn't respond at all. Roger's expression changed suddenly. Could it be that the dragon soul's energy was used up? Chapter 101. What's wrong? Kadger asked. Roger gently shook his head. It's nothing, we retreat. Kadger frowned slightly. He knew Roger was in trouble, otherwise he wouldn't have given up this opportunity to kill Magtheridon. I'll cover the rear. Kadger said, raising the chicken leg staff and conjuring a huge fireball to cast at Magtheridon. Magtheridon waved his spear, scattering the fireball, and roared, "You are simply courting death." He raised his spear, and countless fell energies rose from the ground, surging towards the spatial rift in the sky. The spatial rift seemed to be half-activated by the fell energy, and countless fell meteors fell towards the earth. Hellfire! Turolion shouted, "Retreat, the entire army retreat, retreat back to Honor Hold." The army outside the city retreated directly, but the army on the city wall was in a dilemma. Because of the influx of a large amount of fell energy, the fell moat under the city wall had widened several times. If the soldiers jumped off the city wall, they would inevitably be swallowed by the fell energy. Kadger and Roger teleported over. Kadger waved his staff, and an ice slide appeared outside the city wall. "Quick!" Kadger urged, and the soldiers quickly jumped onto the slide and slid towards the outside of the city. Hellfire descended, smashing into the city wall, and the outside of the city, rushing towards the alliance from all directions. Roger put away the dragon soul and the scepter of Sargeras, took out the demon bane sword, and charged towards the hellfire. The tall hellfire did not take Roger seriously. Seeing Roger charging over, it raised its fist and smashed down. Roger suddenly accelerated, rushing past under the hellfire, and the demon bane sword severed the hellfire's thigh. The hellfire fell to the ground, and Roger took the opportunity to jump onto its back and plunged the demon bane sword into the hellfire's head. The demon bane sword disrupted the hellfire's magic cycle, turning it into a pile of stones. Killing one hellfire did not solve the problem at hand. There were even more hellfire rushing towards the alliance. Some Drania paladins turned around to hold back the hellfire, buying time for the alliance soldiers to retreat. But a single punch from the hellfire knocked them back. The holy light saved their lives, but it could not stop them from falling off the city wall. Just as they were about to fall into the fell energy, a huge arcane hand scooped them up and threw them outside the moat. It was Roger who saved them. He used levitate on the alliance soldiers, and kicked them off the city wall. With Roger's strength, the soldiers crossed the fell moat and landed on the ground. Turolion led the paladins to meet them, and Kurdran also led the air force to attract the hellfire's attention. The alliance mages even cast spells to create physical attacks to deal with the hellfire. But it was still useless, and alliance soldiers still lost their lives under the hellfire's fists. Roger got inspiration from the alliance mages and directly manipulated 4 arcane hands, grabbing large stones on the ground and smashing them fiercely at the hellfire. Bang bang bang! After a round of smashing, the hellfire around Roger were all smashed to pieces. Sure enough, brute force was more effective against the hellfire. Kadger also cast levitate on the soldiers, and then used magic to create a strong wind, blowing these soldiers off the city wall. Magtheridon stood on the city wall of Hellfire Citadel, showing off his power and constantly making provocative gestures. But he did not mean to step out of Hellfire Citadel, looking tough on the outside but weak on the inside. The alliance lost hundreds of soldiers, and the casualties were not small. Moreover, the goal of this battle was not achieved. Fortunately, Hellfire Citadel was destroyed by the fell energy wave and the spatial rift, otherwise the lives of the alliance soldiers would have been sacrificed in vain. Turolion and others counted the losses, while Roger was checking the dragon soul. It wasn't that the dragon soul didn't react, but that it was overused and needed to replenish its power. But he already felt that the dragon soul's power was not as good as before. Dream magic and time magic were still abundant, life magic was still weakening, and arcane magic had completely disappeared. Roger was a little panicked. Although he absorbed arcane magic to accumulate strength, it was because the elemental spirits were dormant in Draenor. If he returned to Azeroth, he would still have to rely on arcane magic to survive. He couldn't believe that the powerful dragon soul would be crippled, but no matter how he checked, the arcane magic on the dragon soul still had no reaction at all. The inability to absorb arcane magic made Roger irritable, and his mind was full of ways to repair it. Turolion and Kadger asked him to discuss matters, but he didn't go. Thalasra tentatively asked, "Your Excellency, your reaction now seems like when we first left the Sunwell." "Hey!" Roger was stunned for a moment. Could it be that I have also developed a mana addiction? Thinking about it carefully, it seems possible. He had been absorbing arcane magic from the dragon soul for a long time, just like the elves absorbed arcane energy from the Sunwell. However, the addictiveness of arcane magic was not as great as arcane energy, and coupled with the fact that Roger had just left the Dragon Soul, the reaction was not so great. Thinking of this, Roger broke out in a cold sweat. He knew that he could no longer continue to abuse the Dragon Soul's energy, otherwise, not only would the Dragon Soul lose its power, but he would also suffer torment from suddenly leaving the Dragon Soul. What's more, there was still the consciousness of the old gods lurking in the Dragon Soul. If it weren't for the fact that he was now in Draenor, the old gods would have definitely eroded his mind, causing him to end up like Deathwing. I must resolve the influence of the old gods as soon as possible. Roger remembered his original purpose in coming to Draenor, and he immediately said to Thalasra, "You will follow to Ralion's command next. I want to return to the Black Temple." After speaking, without waiting for Thalasra to react, he waved the scepter of Sargeras and disappeared in front of her. Thalasra scratched her head, organized her words in her mind, and then went to report to Turalion. When Turalion heard that Roger might have developed a mana addiction, he frowned. Now was a critical moment for the Alliance, and Roger, the #1 combat force, suddenly had a problem, which gave him a feeling of adding insult to injury. Kadger comforted him, with Roger's wisdom, he should be able to resolve this problem quickly. What we have to face now is Magtharidan's attack. With the Apexis artillery, this cunning demon will not personally attack Honorhold, but he will constantly send demons over to probe. If the Araco crystals cannot be supplied, Magtharidan will not hesitate to launch a general attack. Turalion said in a deep voice, "Solving this problem is very simple, as long as we know where Magtharidan's reinforcements are coming from. As long as we solve this source, Magtharidan will not have enough demons to probe the attack, and he can only rely on the rifts in the sky to replenish hellfire." Kadger looked at Thalasra, "I need Garona's help." "No problem, I'll send a message." Thalasra agreed and sent someone back to the Black Temple. Garona had been teaching assassin skills in the Black Temple, and Roger seemed to have forgotten her. Now that she finally had something to do, and it was still for Kadger, she happily accepted. Chapter 102. Roger did not stop Garona from leaving, he was indeed about to forget her. He initially brought Garona along to assassinate some prominent figures among the orcs. However, upon actually arriving in Draenor, he discovered that there were hardly any important orc figures left. Someone like Kargath, a coward, was completely beneath Garona's attention. Keeping him around was the best choice because he could gather the scattered orcs, making it easier for the Alliance to eliminate them. The only one worth Garona's attention was Grommash, but now was not the time to deal with Grommash. He still needed Grommash to hold back the demons in Nagrand. Therefore, lending Garona to Kadger for a while was not a problem at all. Roger now had more important matters, which was to stabilize the divinity within his body. Although he had absorbed a large amount of divinity, he was still using conventional spells, only with greater destructive power. And to get rid of magic addiction, he had to achieve the unity of man and God. By then, he would be the god of arcane, able to generate arcane divine power within his body and supply himself. How could there be any magic addiction then? However, integrating divinity into oneself was not so easy. Roger could only keep trying. Fortunately, he had a cheat, a legendary level arcane intellect. Arcane intellect was originally a cheat for mages, and Roger's arcane intellect was further enhanced, increasing the enlightenment effect by 190%, essentially tripling it. The powerful arcane intellect quickly helped Roger find a solution. A method similar to breathing exercises allowed the divinity to collide and fuse with the body's tissues. After repeated attempts, the divinity gradually combined with the body. Through continuous experimentation, Roger discovered that the combination of arcane divinity and the kidneys surpassed other organs. Initially, Roger was curious as to why this was the case, but he soon thought of the 5 elements theory in traditional Chinese medicine. Arcane belongs to the energy of order, and the representative of the order camp is the Titans. They travel the universe, spreading order. Whenever they arrive at a planet with life, they transform it. They clear away anything unfavorable to the growth of life, such as the old gods and elemental spirits of earth, water, wind, and fire in Azeroth, and the Evergrowth land, which is the transformation of the spirit of life in Draenor. The kidneys are responsible for managing the excretion of metabolic waste from the body, ensuring human health. This is where the two have something in common. This led to Roger's association. If arcane could be associated with the kidneys, then could the energy of other attributes be associated with other organs? Taking it a step further, could it be associated with the 5 elements theory? Life, strengthening the human body, increasing the space for humans to store energy, corresponds to the liver. Holy light, strengthening the will, making people more determined, corresponds to the heart. Shadow, breeding licentiousness and having the ability to transform flesh and blood, corresponds to the spleen. Death. Fell. These two energies don't quite match the 5 internal organs, and Roger looked at it the other way around. Holy light and shadow are also a bit far-fetched. Maybe he was overthinking it. Roger wasn't discouraged. If the 5 elements theory was ruled out, he could just change to another direction. Arcane and fell are opposites, life and death are opposites, holy light and shadow are opposites. If the 3 opposing energies are seen as one, there are 3 sets of energies supporting each other, which is a very stable triangle. If the opposing energies are inverted, it becomes a hexagram. This seems to be the same as the energy chart given by Blizzard, but the positions of the energies are different. If that's the case, Roger began to experiment. He locked himself in the laboratory and began to build the runic framework for these 6 energies. Slowly filling in the 6 energies, the position of the energy filling given by Blizzard's official collapsed as soon as it was set up. Roger tried his deduced model again, but it succeeded. Obviously, Blizzard Entertainment wouldn't have thought that someone would travel to the world of Warcraft, and naturally wouldn't have thought that someone would try the energy structure they designed according to the hexagram. The confirmation of the hexagram theory allowed Roger to have a better understanding of energy conversion. Equilateral triangle, holy light, life, arcane, are all positive energies, giving people courage, strengthening the human body, and inspiring people to create. Inverted triangle, shadow, death, fell, are all negative energies, inducing people to fall, withering the human body, and corroding people with evil. The fact that arcane is suitable for the kidneys should be a coincidence. Because Roger quickly discovered that life divinity also has a strong affinity for the kidneys. From this, it is inferred that the energy affinity may not be the kidneys themselves, but the water inside the kidneys. Matter has 3 states, solid, liquid, and gas. Energy should also follow this rule. Energy dissipates as a gas, and gradually gathers, constantly compressing to become a liquid. As the energy liquefies, its power also increases. The well of eternity and the sun well are based on this principle. Of course, after being converted into a solid, the power will be even greater. The combination of divinity and the body is a process of energy solidification. Thinking about it this way, Roger suddenly understood. There are several ways to solidify a liquid, one is temperature, and the other is pressure. Because solidification is performed in the body, reducing the temperature is not suitable, only pressure can be chosen. Roger's previous use of divinity to collide with the body was a process of increasing pressure. After finding the principle, Roger quickly formulated more than a dozen plans. After experimenting with one plan after another, he finally found a suitable plan. That is to fuse the divinity into the water of the body, especially the blood. Then accelerate the flow rate of the divinity, thereby generating a strong pressure, solidifying the divinity throughout the body. Roger chose to retreat into seclusion, and this seclusion lasted for a year. A year is enough for many things to happen, and the entire drainer has changed. Garona found the source of Magtharidan's reinforcements, the dark portal in Farallon. Turalion launched a raid. The light's hammer entered through the crack in Farallon. 10 Apex's cannons repelled the demons who wanted to stop them, and Kadger used the skull of Gul'dan to close the dark portal. Magtharidan, who had lost his reinforcements, sought other reinforcements. However, the demons of Gorgrond invaded the Grond's territory and were frantically ravaged by the Grond. The ogres and orcs of Nagrand united and launched an assault on the trolls, regaining a large amount of land and almost driving the demons back to the dark portal. The demons of Frostfire Ridge were still fighting the severe cold there. Their powerful fire spells were severely weakened, and they could only use fell energy to corrupt the animals of Frostfire Ridge and drive them to attack their own kind. Without reinforcements, Magtharidan did indeed shrink back to Hellfire Citadel, hiding in the fell energy, waiting for an opportunity. Chapter 103. With the external threat gone, the Draenor Alliance finally had a chance to breathe. The Araco were recuperating in Skirich. After Iggy's went insane, Seth became the de facto leader of the Araco. As a scholar, Seth didn't know how to govern a country, but he possessed a scholar's humility. According to the agreement between Ansua and Roger, the Black Temple and the Araco would exchange knowledge from the Apex's crystals. During the exchange, Seth consulted with Alyria and others, who were happy to teach him. Before long, Seth was doing a decent job. The Arako were in dire need of restoration, and everything was focused on restoring the population. Seth encouraged childbirth, and thousands of young Arako were born within a year. These thousands of young Arako couldn't alleviate the problem of the Arako's scarcity, but it was a good start. If this rate of reproduction continued, the Arako would exceed 100,000 once the young Arako grew up. The Drania were also seeking development. After a year of construction, Shatratha's city defences had been built. Achinedown had also restored a portion of its area. They tried to solve the problem of Muru, but they failed. However, the problem of Nara Dior was solved. Kala guided Dior to regain consciousness, and Archbishop Murad returned to Achinedown. Shatrath, filled with holy light, was not where he resided. Farallon was the last habitat of the primals, but because the dark portal was opened here, demons slaughtered a large number of primals. The mages collected the surviving primals at Kajar's fortress to study their life forms. Alyria established a fortress on the Bone Wastes, claiming a piece of green land for the elves. The elven mages learned life magic from the Book of Rogers and planted trees around Alyria's stronghold. The giant pit after the explosion of Achinedown, Skeddies, and the ruins of Shadowmoon village. At the same time, these elven mages were also studying how to remove fell energy and restore the land to life. Kurdalan chose to build the Wild Hammer stronghold on the ruins of the Drania town of Shanar, monitoring the demons of Hellfire Citadel on one hand and breeding griffins on the mountains south of Shanar on the other. The Allied forces completely occupied Talater and Spires of Iraq, occupying half of Hellfire Citadel and Shadowmoon Valley, extending their reach into Farallon, Zongarmarsh, and Nagrand. With the territory expanding and resources abundant, everything was thriving. Roger emerged from the laboratory, and the entire Black Temple was filled with arcane and life energy. Everyone was alarmed, they had never seen such abundant energy. Only the elves felt as if they had returned to Kulthalas, bathed in the radiance of the sun well. However, unlike the sun well, they now felt an unusual activity in their bodies. Some injured people noticed their wounds itching, and when they uncovered the gauze, they found that the wounds were healing rapidly. Some people, burdened by chronic injuries and exhausted, also became relaxed after bathing in the energy. Roger. Alyria led Aratar over, looking at Roger, who was constantly emitting energy, with surprise. Alyria. Roger walked towards his wife, kissed her, then knelt in front of Aratar, looking at him kindly. The little guy has grown into a little adult. Aratar looked at Roger blankly. He felt that Roger was very kind, but he couldn't remember that this was his father. Alyria also knelt down. Aratar, this is your father. Aratar didn't call out, and Roger didn't mind. After all, it was his fault that his son was unfamiliar with him. However, he believed that he would soon make his son familiar with him. He picked up Aratar and walked outside the Black Temple. As Roger moved, the rich energy also moved with him, soon spreading to the forest outside the Black Temple. Son, this is a gift for you. Roger stretched out his hand, and life energy surged. The trees became lush, tender grass began to grow under the trees, and beautiful flowers bloomed in the grass. Aratar's eyes widened at the sight of such a spectacle. He covered his mouth with his small hand, full of surprise. Do you like it? Roger asked with a smile. I like it. Aratar nodded repeatedly. How did you do it? Call me father, and I'll tell you. Aratar hesitated for a moment. After all, he felt unfamiliar with Roger. Alyria walked over and encouraged him to call out father again, and Aratar whispered, Father. The word father made Roger's heart bloom, and the energy around him became excited, making sounds in the air as if playing a beautiful chapter of music. The active energy once again nourished the earth, and flowers continued to emerge from the earth, spreading their branches and leaves, and blooming. In an instant, the land in front of the Black Temple became a huge garden. Alyria was amazed. Legend has it that flowers carpeted the ground wherever the demigod Cenarius went. She had thought it was just a legend before, but now, seeing the effect Roger had created, it should be no different from the legend. Is this the power of a demigod? The news of Roger's emergence from seclusion soon spread throughout all the forces of the Alliance. Leaders from all sides sent people to congratulate him and presented gifts. Seth sent 1,000 colliery birds to expand the colliery nights. Velan sent a holy light beacon, which could be used to build a teleportation array between Shatrath and the Black Temple. Kurdalan sent a griffin cub, the first griffin they had bred in Shanar. Turalion sent Garona back, and Garona brought back a fell crystal, which was Turalion's trophy. Tyrolean sent it over in the hope that Roger could find a way to purify the fel energy. Hellfire Citadel was filled with a large amount of fel energy, and if the fel energy could not be purified, it would eventually threaten the entire drainer. Nobundo personally came to the Black Temple, congratulating him and bringing news. Roger's emergence had alarmed the elemental spirits, and the elemental spirits were requesting his help. The elemental spirits have awakened? Roger asked. Nobundo said, they have awakened a bit of consciousness, but it will take a long time to fully awaken. They have already felt the disaster drainer has suffered and want to awaken as soon as possible to repair this world. Roger pondered, wondering if the elemental spirits had a way to purify fel energy. Chapter 104. Roger prepared to go to the elemental throne to see the situation. If the elemental spirits could really purify the fel energy and restore the land, then the next task for the Alliance would be the fel marshes of Shadowmoon Valley. Drainia technicians, under Kara's guidance, installed the light beacon, and the portal opened accordingly. Roger had been studying teleportation magic, but this was his first time seeing a fixed portal. After studying it, he quickly understood the principle behind it. Then he imitated a portal, connecting the Black Temple and Honor Hold. With these two portals, support between the allied forces became faster. If materials weren't limited, Roger really wanted to build another portal to Skirich, so that all the Alliance's strongholds could be closely connected. The two of them arrived in Shatrath through the portal, and Roger discussed the matter with Velan. Velan strongly supported Roger's idea and was willing to go to the elemental throne together. Although Velan was a bit of a saint, he was indeed a good person. So, the three of them, with a squad of allied forces, set off from Shatrath, crossed the mountains, and headed towards the elemental throne. Garona led the scouts to scout ahead. She was very familiar with the orcs and ogres and could easily find their tracks. The journey was peaceful. The orcs and ogres were busy dealing with the demons and had not sent troops to guard the vicinity of the elemental throne. The group arrived at a mountain depression, in the middle of which was an island in a lake, and on the island was a round platform like an altar. On the platform, there were 4 faint auras. This is the elemental throne. Nobundo introduced. Gul'dan's fel energy took advantage of the elemental spirits, causing abnormal weather to appear throughout Draenor. Frost appeared in the woodlands, drought appeared in the grasslands, accompanied by a large amount of wind and rain. These disasters caused food shortages, water shortages, and a large number of creatures died. After the corpses were not disposed of, they quickly turned into plagues, triggering large-scale deaths of creatures. In other words, as long as the elemental spirits are awakened, most of Draenor's problems can be solved. Roger asked. Nobundo nodded. All right. Roger had a general idea in his mind, and he stepped towards the elemental throne. While walking, he released arcane energy and life energy, and the energy expanded to the elemental throne, immediately causing the 4 auras to cheer, and the 4 elemental spirits gradually took shape. Life energy gradually restored the vitality of the elemental spirits, and arcane energy strengthened the entity of the elemental spirits. Under the nourishment of energy, the bodies of the elemental spirits grew larger and larger, until they were about the same height as Roger, and then Roger stopped. The elemental spirits were enjoying the abundant energy when they suddenly woke up from their intoxication and looked at Roger with displeasure. But Roger glared, and the elemental spirits immediately became obedient and bowed to Roger. Respected demigod, thank you for saving us. Roger asked, now that you have awakened, let's talk about how you plan to save Draenor. The 4 elemental spirits did not expect Roger to be so impatient, but this was also their purpose. As the embodiment of Draenor, they wanted to save Draenor more than anyone else, because this was saving themselves. Please wait. The elemental spirits were surrounded by elemental energy, and through the elemental energy, they sensed the entire world. When they touched the wounds, their bodies would twitch, and when they felt prosperity, their bodies and minds would be relaxed. After a while, the elemental spirits stopped sensing the world and said wearily, the fissures in Tainan jungle will take thousands of years to repair, but the fel energy within will take at least tens of thousands of years. The fel marshes of Shadowmoon Valley are very troublesome, and the fel energy needs to be purified little by little, but this will take at least several thousand years. The most troublesome thing is the cracks in the sky, which are permanent wounds and almost impossible to heal. Is this the conclusion you have come to? Roger asked faintly. The elemental spirits said awkwardly, with our current strength, a few thousand years is already very fast. Roger waved his hand and said, what I want to know is not your strength, but your method. The fire elemental spirit said, the first step is to use fire to burn the fell energy. Although fell energy is evil, it can be burned with fire if it is not controlled by anyone. After burning, use soil to bury the ashes. The earth elemental spirit continued, use the degradation ability of the earth to slowly melt the ashes into the soil. The wind elemental spirit said, the fell energy permeating the air must be purified with lightning. The water elemental spirit, then use rain to press these ashes onto the earth and melt them into the earth. Velan explained, the Naru's ship is about to arrive in Draenor. With the help of the Naru, I will no longer need to be stationed in Shattrath for a long time. At that time, I will personally go to Shadow Moon Valley. Roger raised his eyebrows slightly, then thank you. He said thank you, but his mind was constantly turning. The Naru contacted by the Draenia are not one, but a group. Roger remembers the names of 3, Adal, Xiri, and Muaru. With the help of this Naru Legion, the Draenia will surely become the most powerful force in the Draenor Alliance. Will this break the balance of the alliance? Now that the demons are holding on, Roger doesn't need to worry. What he is worried about is whether the parties will fight again over land and other disputes after defeating the demons. Roger's worries are not unreasonable. Although the current alliance has a small population and resources are easy to allocate. But the alliance will always have a day when the population is saturated, and then Draenor's resources will not be enough, which will inevitably lead to conflict. Although this time may be decades or even hundreds of years later, the Allied forces may have returned to Azeroth. But Roger has never given up on Draenor, even if this world is small, it is the foundation he has worked so hard to build. Chapter 105. On the way back from the elemental throne, the group saw a giant pillar of holy light descend from the sky, enveloping the entire Shattrath city. Shatar! Velan said in surprise. The Naru are here? Roger was taken aback for a moment, then waved his hand to create a temporary portal, teleporting everyone back to Shattrath. Stepping out of the portal, Roger finally saw the source of the giant pillar of holy light, which turned out to be a spaceship. The entire spaceship floated in the sky above Shattrath, and through the crystal windows, Roger could see a large number of Naru flashing with holy light. Naru spaceships are powered artificially, relying entirely on the Naru's power to traverse the universe. That's why the spaceship that rescued the Draenia from Argus back then exhausted the energy of 3 Naru. The Naru spaceship in the sky was the same, and it also needed to maintain combat capability, requiring even more Naru. Soon, the Naru created a holy light spiral staircase, connecting to the towers of Shattrath. A group of Naru floated out of the spaceship, numbering more than a dozen, large and small. Naru have cubs? Roger quickly remembered that in the game, Outland Shattrath, Adal was with 2 small Naru. Each Naru with a normal physique is a powerful demigod-level creature, comparable to an army. So many Naru gathered together are already comparable to a legion. Holy Light Legion? Roger inexplicably thought of the Naru mother Zera. Judging from Zera's name, the Naru all have an inexplicable relationship with Azeroth. Velan stepped forward and said respectfully, "Respected Adal, welcome to Shattrath." Adal's holy light flickered a few times, and then he said, "Velan, it seems you have overcome your difficulties." Velan said, "This is only temporary. The Burning Legion has already noticed this world, and they are constantly attacking here through the Dark Portal. Although we and our allies have temporarily gained victory, if we cannot completely eliminate the Burning Legion, we will eventually fail." Adal was silent for a moment, then turned to Roger and the humans, "Are these people your allies?" Velan nodded, introducing the Naru, "This is Roger's Kishane, a human demigod. He comes from Azeroth and came to Draenor through the Orc's Dark Portal." Adal gazed at Roger, "Hello, Roger's Kishane." "Hello, Adal." Roger nodded in response. "Since you are allies of the Draenia, then you are our allies." Adal generously promised, "We recognize the alliance signed by Velan and you, and will communicate and fight together according to the previous manner." Dallas looked at Adal in surprise. He didn't expect this newly arrived Naru to be so easy to talk to. Or perhaps, like Velan, the Naru are gentle elders? Roger, however, was unmoved by Adal's generous promise. Obeying the alliance was a given. If Adal came to abolish the alliance, it would mean that the Naru's arrival was not to deal with the Burning Legion, but to conquer Draenor. However, he also responded to Adal's goodwill, "We will also recognize the fact that the Naru have joined, and recognize that the Naru have the same rights as Velan." Velan's face changed slightly, and then he fell silent. Adal said, "Although we and the Draenia are one, we still have young children. I hope to find a place to settle them, let them stay away from the war, and enjoy their childhood. These words seemed to be explaining to Velan, but they were also expressing a signal to Roger. They were preparing to reside in Draenor for a long time, and were also expressing their determination to fight against the Burning Legion to the death. Roger said, "We are just preparing to purify Shadowmoon Valley, you can build a base there." "That's great." Adal's voice was smiling, "It's a win-win situation to be able to find a place to live and contribute to the fight against the Burning Legion. Shala, take the little ones to Shadowmoon Valley." Ainara flashed with holy light, "Yes, sir." It looked at Roger, "Rogers, I'll leave the rest to you." "No problem." Roger nodded, "I'll take you to Shadowmoon Village first, where you can live temporarily." Saying that, Roger took out the scepter of Sargeras and opened the portal. The Nara didn't seem to react, and waited a few seconds before entering the portal. Roger led the people in, and after crossing the portal, they appeared in the square of Shadowmoon Village. Shalal looked at the environment of Shadowmoon Village. The points of fell energy were very dirty in the eyes of the Naru, but other than that, it was a good place to live. "Children, let's start cleaning our new home." The little Naru ran towards the buildings in Shadowmoon Village, the holy light flashing rapidly, looking very happy. When they came near the points of fell energy, a powerful holy light suddenly erupted from them, purifying the fell energy wherever it passed. "Is this how the Naru clean?" Roger curiously watched the little Naru cleaning, feeling amused. He even thought that if Alto grew up a little more, he should also clean, right? Shatrath, the welcoming ceremony is over. Dallas led the people away, and the Drania also went to prepare for the upcoming celebration. Velan and Adal stood facing each other. Adal said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Velan." Velan was silent for a moment, "I don't quite understand why you did this." He was indeed very puzzled. The Drania worship the Naru. This is tens of thousands of years of gratitude, which has long become a habit. Even though his current strength is almost the same as the Naru, he is still extremely respectful to the Naru. The Drania regard the Naru as leaders, and Velan also thinks so. He really couldn't understand why Adal had to separate the two. "Just for a base?" Adal explained, "I did this to curry favor with Rogers." Velan was even more confused. Adal said, "Velan, you also have the ability to foresee, have you seen Rogers in the future?" Velan was stunned for a moment. He would foresee all the languages after the humans entered Draenor. He saw Turalian, Allyria, Kurdran, etc. in it, but he never saw Roger once. Could it be, he can't live to a distant future? Adal shook his head, "I think quite the opposite, we cannot foresee his future." Velan was silent, "Yes. It's too difficult to kill a demigod. What's more, Roger is such a cautious person, unless he uses his weaknesses, Allyria and Alto." Chapter 106. The method the Naru used to purify fell energy is simple, using holy light to clash head-on. This method isn't something Roger can imitate. Arcane is a little better, but life energy is only half as effective and simply isn't suitable for purifying fell energy. Therefore, Roger wanted to find a solution from the elemental spirits, but the results were disappointing. Fortunately, the Naru brought a solution. After purifying Shadowmoon Village, Zilla temporarily resided there with the little Naru. Roger didn't mention purifying Shadowmoon Valley. Instead, he returned to the Black Temple first. In the following days, he took Allyria and Alto to visit Shadowmoon Village. Little Alto became friends with several little Naru, and they played together every day. When leaving, Roger invited Zilla and the others to the Black Temple and told them about Kala. Zilla was very curious about the Dark Naru. In the past, Naru could only become void abominations. Therefore, he gladly accepted the invitation and returned to the Black Temple with Roger. Unlike the environment of Shadowmoon Village, Zilla felt very curious, especially the little Naru, who were looking around as they walked. Roger took Zilla and the others to see Kala. Kala and Zilla talked for a while, but they didn't quite agree. One represents holy light, and the other represents shadow. Their opposing positions made it difficult for them to come to an agreement. Zilla hoped that Kala would restore its holy light form as much as possible and return to the Naru ranks. However, Kala said that the shadow form was the ultimate destination of the Naru, hoping that Zilla could join its ranks. The little Naru were a little at a loss. Roger signaled Alto to take the little Naru away. Then he said to the two, "Where there is light, there is darkness. This is an unchanging truth of the universe. so there is no need to be black or white. Holy light and shadow are just different energies, not good or evil. I think it's better this way now. Our enemies are never just the Burning Legion, but also the old gods. These shadow forces that have risen up at some unknown time are very powerful. We need the help of shadow to understand the enemy and finally defeat them. Roger's words stopped the two from arguing. Kala turned and left. Zilla was a little discouraged. Kala has become strange. I'm worried that shadow will not only change its form but also change its personality. Maybe it's just that you haven't seen each other for too long, Roger comforted. I hope so. Zilla looked at the scene of half light and half darkness inside the Black Temple, feeling a little suffocated. This temple built by the Drania would probably be difficult to restore to its original appearance. Roger, when are you going to purify this land? Zilla asked. Of course, the sooner the better. We still have many enemies to deal with, Roger said. Then let's start tomorrow. Zilla said, I'll help you purify this fell energy, but I hope you can allow the Drania to rebuild Omburi village. Omburi village is at the foot of the western mountains of the Hand of Gul'dan. After the orcs occupied Omburi village, Gul'dan used fell energy to pollute the mountains in the east of the village, forming the Hand of Gul'dan. Omburi village was buried under the fell energy. Roger shook his head gently. If the Drania want to use Omburi village as a stronghold, it's not something I can decide alone. Zilla was stunned. It didn't expect Roger to be so principled. But it didn't say much. It can be used as a jointly managed stronghold. The Drania don't want to occupy this world alone. Then no problem. Roger said, Shadow Moon Valley is so big, I never thought about occupying it alone. The two reached a consensus. Early the next morning, Zilla led the little Naru towards the fell swamp. The fell energy in the fell swamp was much more than in Shadow Moon Village. The little Naru had a hard time purifying it, and even Zilla didn't dare to purify large areas. The work efficiency was a bit low. Roger said, Velan said that holy light can be used to burn fell energy. Zilla said, in that case, it cannot be completely purified. Some residue of fell energy will remain and continue to affect this land. Roger said, wouldn't it be good to collect the residue? That makes sense. Zilla immediately guided the spell. A powerful divine fire descended from the sky, burning a large area of land. Under the scorching of the holy fire, the fell energy burned like fuel. Soon, the fell energy of a large area of land was burned to ashes. On top of these ashes, there was still an evil aura emanating, floating into the air. Roger cast a spell, and a tornado rolled these ashes into a pile, and then let the soldiers put these ashes into jars and seal them up. These ashes are actually very good spell-casting materials. Although there is still some evil aura, as long as the mages handle it properly, it will not bring any impact. In the future, the mages of the Black Temple will specialize in using this spell-casting material called Fell Ash, so that Drainer is popular. After cleaning up the ashes, there is still some residual fell energy on the ground. But the little Naru can purify this bit of residue. Zilla burned the fell energy in front, Roger gathered the ashes together, the allied forces took away the ashes, and the little Naru happily purified the residue. After the division of labor, the efficiency became 100 times faster. In a few days, a large area of land in the east of the Hand of Gul'dan was purified. A month later, all the fell energy around the entire Hand of Gul'dan was purified, and the old site of Omburi village appeared in front of everyone. Although after years of erosion by fell energy, the complete Drania architecture can no longer be seen, there are still some crystals that can represent Drania craftsmanship retained. The Drania were very happy, and Velan even came to Shadow Moon Valley in person to preside over the reconstruction of Omburi village. 2 more months, all the fell energy in the entire fell swamp was completely purified. The remaining fell energy pollution in Shadow Moon Valley is no longer a concern, and the Drania paladins can complete this work. The purified land is very fertile. Roger and other Alliance high-level officials held a meeting to prepare to build this place into the Alliance's second logistic space. The original Hand of Gul'dan has been renamed Shattered Stone Mountain. Trees are planted in Shattered Stone Mountain and the south and east of Shattered Stone Mountain, and the north is used as farmland. As long as it is managed well, this land can support millions of people. Roger sent out the Demon Hunter, plus Kadger's help, and soon recovered the Farallon Islands. In order to cooperate with the next step of the attack, Tempest Keep was parked in the Farallon Islands. Muru led the Drania to purify the fell energy of the islands and build the islands into a military area. The terrain here is really too good, it can hide countless troops, and with Tempest Keep as transportation, it can raid anywhere in Draenor at any time. Chapter 107 Nagrand, outside High Mall. The Orc and Ogre armies fought so fiercely that the demons were retreating, already nearing the demon camp. A year ago, the demons were the ones pressing the Horde forces. They never imagined that the Horde, dwindling in numbers, would become stronger in battle. Especially that Orc Warkif named Grommash, whose battle axe had slaughtered countless demons, almost dyeing the axe green with fel-infused blood. The demons had once ambushed Grommash when he was leading a patrol, lying in wait on the only path. When Grommash entered the encirclement, they attacked from all sides, surrounding the patrol. The other orcs were quickly killed, and even Grommash's dire wolf was slain, but Grommash refused to give up. He wielded Gorehowl and carved a bloody path, leaving countless wounds on himself as he took countless demon lives. In that battle, Grommash went berserk. The demon blood consumed by the orcs had long since faded, and their combat strength was not as great as before. However, in the process of fighting the demons, the orcs gradually regained their past savagery, which is why their combat strength became stronger and stronger. Upon returning to the Horde, Grommash immediately led his army back to attack, catching the demons off guard and forcing them to flee in defeat. Grommash chased them all the way to the western mountains of Oshagun, taking advantage of the situation to attack the demon camp there, removing the demon stronghold and threatening the safety of the dark portal. This failed ambush became the turning point of the war, and the Horde began to gain the upper hand. The orcs and ogres, from the south and north, began to pincer the demon camp outside High Mall. If the orcs hadn't suffered too many casualties and needed to rest, Grommash would have definitely taken advantage of the situation to capture this demon camp. Even so, the orcs cut off the connection between the dark portal and the demon camp, and the demon camp, unable to receive reinforcements, would soon be inadequately defended. Today was the day the Horde launched its final assault. As long as this demon camp was taken, the Horde could attack the dark portal itself. Neither side of the battle noticed a black shadow flashing across the battlefield, gradually approaching Grommash. Grommash cleaved a demon in two with an axe, roared, and charged towards another demon. Soon, he came face to face with a powerful Doomguard, who was 3 or 4 times his height. But Grommash was not afraid. He nimbly dodged the Doomguard's chop, severed his Achilles tendon with an axe, then jumped up to avoid the Doomguard's sweep, taking the opportunity to slam Gorehowl between his legs. The Doomguard, unable to endure the excruciating pain, fell to the ground. Grommash approached him, raised Gorehowl, and chopped off his head. After defeating the powerful enemy, Grommash looked up at the battlefield. Victory was already in sight. Just then, Grommash suddenly felt a sense of crisis. He quickly lunged forward, and a sharp blade cut a gash in his neck, but it wasn't fatal. He turned his head and found that it was Garona. "Damn you, you mongrel, how dare you sneak attack me?" Facing Grommash's insults, Garona said coldly, "Don't call me a mongrel. I am disgusted by Orcish blood." The orcs around Grommash, seeing him assassinated, immediately rushed towards Garona. But before they could get close, Garona threw out a bag of blinding powder and disappeared again. The orcs looked around warily, guarding against Garona's sudden attack. Just then, a large number of demons suddenly appeared in the rear of the orcs, charging towards the demon camp. These were reinforcements from the dark portal, who had somehow broken through Kargatha's defenses and breached the orcs' rear. "Damn it!" Grommash cursed, and quickly ordered his overseers to continue attacking the demon camp, while he led his men to meet the demons. The orcs, who had been fighting for a long time, were exhausted and no match for these elite demons. Soon, many orcs fell. Grommash did not retreat, even if he had to fight to the last man. If the demons entered the camp, their sacrifices would be in vain. The orcs around him were dwindling, and Grommash was grief-stricken. All of this was caused under his leadership. He did not blame himself, but turned his grief into anger. He frantically killed every demon who dared to approach him, single-handedly blocking the demon's path. Grommash killed the last demon and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Just then, a sharp blade pierced his neck. Grommash stood there dumbfounded. He had forgotten Garona. He grabbed Garona's hand and raised Gorehowl to fight back. But after continuous battles, he had little strength left, and the fatal blow drained his last strength. Gorehowl fell to the ground, and Grommash also fell to the ground. He looked at Garona unwillingly. Garona's heart was filled with thoughts, and she said with disgust, "For King Lane, but this time I did it willingly. She had always felt guilty about the assassination of Lane. Rogers told her that if she wanted to regain her freedom, she had to make the orcs pay blood for blood. So Rogers asked her to assassinate Grommash, and she agreed without hesitation. A black dragon appeared in the south, followed by hundreds of Colliery. Rogers led the Colliery Knights towards the dark portal, where there were not many demons left. Although many demons were still rushing out of the dark portal, they were no longer a threat. Rogers waved the scepter of Sargeras, and one arcane explosion after another was thrown into the demons. The powerful arcane energy tore the demons apart, clearing the space in front of the dark portal. The black dragon landed, and Rogers used arcane hand to grab a large rock and smash it on the pillar of the dark portal. The pillar shattered, the spatial rifts were chaotic, and swallowed those demons who tried to cross the dark portal back. The Colliery Knights chased and killed the fleeing demons, leaving them in the vicinity. Nagrand was still a land of green hills and clear waters, and if the demons polluted it, it would take a lot of effort to purify it. Soon, Turalion led his army to arrive and launched an attack on the Highmall defense line. Any enemy who dared to stand in the way was killed, whether it was a demon or a horde member. The demons and the horde fought each other, and the alliance benefited from it. The ogres attacked the demon camp, but those who joined them were not their allies, the orcs, but the powerful alliance. Because of the battle with the demons, the ogres had declined to the extreme. How could they be the opponent of the alliance? So the ogres shamelessly surrendered. Chapter 108. Turalion accepted the surrender of the ogres, as he was not a bloodthirsty person. Not only that, but he also accepted the surrender of the remaining orcs. Upon learning that there were orc elders and children in the Halen area, he gathered all the orcs together in the Halen region. He told the orcs that they could only move around on Halen Island and destroyed the bridges connecting Halen Island to the outside world. Roger was somewhat dissatisfied with this, believing that it was akin to releasing a tiger back into the mountains, only solving the immediate problem. When Halen Island was no longer sufficient for the orcs to survive, the orcs would inevitably break out of the island and fight for the surrounding land. Turalion shook his head. By that time, we will have already returned to Azeroth, won't we? Obviously, Turalion did not intend to stay in Draenor, nor did he intend to leave his sphere of influence in Draenor. Once he found a way back to Azeroth, he would not hesitate to withdraw all of his troops. Roger didn't say anything, as this was not only Turalion's choice but also the choice of all the Alliance soldiers. They came to Draenor with the determination to die, but now not only were they not dead, but they were also living well. Everyone began to miss their relatives and friends, which was the spiritual sustenance for those far from home. Seeking common ground while reserving differences has always been Roger's state of cooperation with the Alliance. This time was no different. Turalion issued the order, and Roger would not overturn it. However, he had That'Stara establish the second elven stronghold, the Farstrider's Post, on the island near the Elemental Throne to monitor the Elemental Throne, Halen, and also Highmall. Turalion didn't quite understand, because the Alliance had already built Fort Roger Ceres by the lake between Halen and Highmall in his name. Although the garrison commander of the fortress, Murad, was a Drania, with his hatred for the orcs, he would definitely not allow the orcs to rise again. As for the ogres, who are harmonious soft bones, their harm may not even be comparable to the orcs who only have the old, weak, sick, and disabled left. This was exactly what Roger was worried about. Turalion did not understand the strength and stubbornness in the orcs' bones. You must know that Grommash's son is currently in Halen. Garrosh Hellscream is an even more powerful hero than his father, iron-blooded, tough, and even more crazy, doing things without any bottom line. If his every move is not monitored, Garrosh might unleash his heroic posture and bring huge damage to the Alliance. More importantly, Garrosh's fate involves too much, and behind him, there may be bronze dragons or infinite dragons watching. Speaking of which, it's also strange. Roger thought that he had already changed history, but why are there still time managers appearing? Loki expressed his disapproval. Could it be because of the dragon soul? Roger took out the dragon soul. He hadn't absorbed the time divinity before, but thinking about it now, it was time. Seeing this skill, Roger regretted not absorbing the time divinity earlier. This skill is simply a divine skill. Connecting the past and the present, you can see the cause of things and also see the future development. Knowing the causes and consequences, wouldn't it be invincible to do things? Roger couldn't wait to use the Eye of Time, and in an instant, he seemed to be outside of reality. He was like Scarlett Johansson in the movie Lucy, waving his hand to move time forward and backward, and go anywhere he wanted to go. He saw the birth of Draenor, the ravages of the spirit of life, and also saw the Titan Agrimar using the elemental spirits to create Grond. That was the purest use of arcane magic, which fascinated Roger. The vast arcane energy, wrapped in the four elements, gave life to the mountains. Every step made Roger mesmerized and unable to extricate himself. He saw the war between Grond and the Evergrowth, the pure power, the fist-to-flesh bombardment, the overwhelming power, which was more enjoyable than all the blockbusters he had seen before crossing over. In order to fight against the powerful Grond, the spores of the Evergrowth gathered into 3 spore clusters with Grond, wanting to kill Grond with numbers. They paid the price of 2 spore clusters and successfully killed Grond. The stones that fell after Grond's death formed a new life, the Magnaron. The Magnaron were numerous and strengthened by Agrimar, continuing Grond's mission and launching an attack on the last spore cluster, Baton, and the primal thorny beasts. Roger quickly discovered the development history of Draenor's races. Grond's fragments formed the Magnaron weakened into the Goron due to the spore virus of Baton, the Goron weakened into the Oghren weakened into the Ogres, and the Ogres weakened into the Orcs. Each weakening resulted in a more intelligent creature. If it continued to weaken, it would inevitably form a more intelligent race. Unfortunately, the Orcs were destined to withdraw from the historical stage of Draenor. Roger specially went to see the history of the Araco, the activities of the 3 demigods in the spires of Arak, and also saw how Rukmar shaped the Araco. The Araco civilization gradually became strong, and they used a powerful combination of arcane magic and holy light to create a powerful artifact, the Breath of Rukmar. The brilliant Araco civilization spread throughout Draenor until it attracted the attention of the spore clusters. The war with the spore clusters led to the decline of the Apexis civilization, and then the Araco split, and has been like this until now. After seeing the past, Roger waved time again and looked to the future. In the future, the Draenor alliance will flourish, accumulating countless wealth with a large amount of fertile land. However, the enemies of the alliance do not want them to discover. The demons began a large-scale attack and quickly broke through the alliance's defenses and made contact with Magtheridon. With a sufficient source of troops, Magtheridon began to attack again. This cunning demon was looking for loopholes in the alliance everywhere. Roger frowned slightly. Logically speaking, he should be able to stop Magtheridon's attack. Even if he was delayed by something, Turalion, Kadger, and others would be able to handle Magtheridon's crisis. Besides, there were also the Naru, who would never allow Magtheridon to be arrogant. Roger began to look for his own figure and finally found himself, as well as Turalion, Kadger, and others in Farallon. Demons were frantically attacking the Naru camp in Farallon, and the person leading this demon army was a powerful Eridar mage. Velan confronted this Eridar mage and called him Kil'jaeden. Roger instantly woke up from the river of time, and then he heard a knock on the door. Roger opened the door and saw that Stara appearing at the door, walking in anxiously. "Your Excellency, you are finally awake. Farallon has been attacked by demons, and the Naru have sent us a letter of request for help." "What?" Roger asked with an uncertain expression. "How long have I been in this room?" Chapter 109. It's been almost 2 years. Tas Risa said, "The general has come to visit many times, but you haven't come out." After receiving the Naru players, the general took the Alto to Phalanren for support, asking me to wake you up as much as possible. Roger frowned. He had been in the River of Time for almost 2 years? How was that possible? He only stayed when he observed Agrimar casting spells, otherwise, he would fast forward and wouldn't spend much time at all. Could it be because Agrimar took too long to cast spells? "Your Excellency, shouldn't we set off immediately?" Roger thought for a moment. He knew that it was Kil'jaeden who was invading Phalanren this time. This powerful demon's strength far exceeded that of a demigod, and the Naru Legion was no match for him at all. If they didn't go to rescue them, the Naru Legion would definitely be destroyed. After losing too many high-end combat forces, the Draenor alliance would definitely be defeated one by Kil'jaeden. When that time came, he would really have to take the Alto to the sea to escape Kil'jaeden. But if he gathered in Phalanren, he could only watch Magtheridon lead the demons to wreak havoc on Draenor. By then, everything the alliance had built would be reduced to ruins, which would be no different from him not going to Phalanren. If that's the case, then... He softly told Tas Risa a plan. Although Tas Risa was a little doubtful, she still agreed out of trust in Roger. He handed a teleport beacon to Tas Risa, and then used the beacon on the Alto to teleport over. As soon as he walked out of the teleportation gate, he saw that the Alto was being attacked by overwhelming demons. Powerful Doom Guards led the team, and continuous hellfire rained down from the sky. The soldiers operated the Apex's cannons to counterattack continuously, but there were still many demons breaking through the defense line and landing on the deck. Aurelia led the army to fight the demons continuously, preventing them from attacking the cabin. Medics desperately dragged the wounded soldiers back for rescue. There were more demons than Roger expected. He didn't know what Kil'jaeden was brewing in the shadows. However, no matter what the conspiracy, as long as the demons dared to attack the Alto, he would send the demons back to the twisting nether. He raised his hand and fired a barrage of arcane missiles. Although it was a basic spell, under the blessing of divinity, these arcane missiles easily penetrated the demons' bodies, even the powerful Doom Guards were no exception. Aurelia was scrambling to avoid the demons' attacks when she saw the demons suddenly stiffen and fall to the ground with a bang. After careful observation, she saw a series of holes created by magic on the demons' bodies. There was no such powerful mage on the ship, unless... The morale on the Alto was greatly boosted, and Roger gave them the greatest confidence. Roger raised his hand and blessed the entire ship with arcane blessing and life blessing for a day. This was a skill he obtained after completely merging with divinity, but because his divine power was weak, he couldn't permanently bless others like Alexstrasza saw. Arcane blessing strengthened the soldiers' spell-casting abilities and magic resistance, preventing the demons' spells from becoming a fatal threat. Life blessing strengthened the soldiers' physical fitness and recovery abilities, enhancing their melee combat abilities. Even if they were injured, they could quickly heal their wounds and rejoin the battle. This kind of battle, hovering between life and death, greatly tempered the soldiers' combat abilities. The soldiers, who originally needed to constantly dodge, quickly became more than capable. Aurelia ran to Roger's side. The situation is very serious now. The Naru's mana forges have been continuously occupied by demons, and the Storm Keep's power has not been fully replenished, so it cannot be put into battle. Roger was surprised. I remember the Storm Keep had power, didn't it? Aurelia said helplessly. The demons sent spies to destroy the Storm Keep's power core, so the Storm Keep needs to build a large number of mana forges to replenish energy. Spies? Roger was speechless. Don't the Naru have any defenses at all? Of course, they have defenses, but you have to know that although the Naru are powerful, their numbers are still too small. Moreover, they are all stubborn, and the demons tricked the guards away with a little trick. Roger shook his head. Having such allies meant that although he didn't have to worry about being plotted against, he had to clean up their messes from time to time. The Storm Keep, having lost its power, was a fixed target. In the game, Kael'thas was able to take down Storm Keep and capture Muru. The demons were much stronger than Kael'thas, so taking down Storm Keep would be even easier. Soon, the demons on the Alto were cleared out. Roger looked at the Apex's cannons that had stopped firing and said to Aurelia, the Apex's cannons still need to be improved. They are suitable for hitting large demons, but they are too powerful for small demons and waste energy. Aurelia said, that's right, a little less power doesn't matter. The most important thing is that they can attack in a range. What about barrage attacks? That's fine. After the two briefly discussed the improvement of the Apex's cannons, they turned their attention to the sky above the Phalanran Islands. At this time, the sky above the Phalanran Islands was covered with dark clouds, countless hellfire rained down on the islands, and a large number of demons flew in the air. The demons attacking the Phalanran Islands were countless times more than those attacking the Alto. The Light Legion was resisting, and the Holy Nova spells occasionally crossed the mountains and illuminated the earth. The demons' attack this time was very sudden. They seemed to have mastered the intelligence of Phalanran's defenses, Aurelia said. Someone leaked the information. Roger said affirmatively, because he had great confidence in his subordinates. With members of the Brotherhood of the Horse present, there would be no chance for the demons to take advantage. Unless there was a mole. But who was this mole? Roger filtered all the people in the know in his mind. It was either a high-ranking general of the Allied forces or a high-level Drania. It seemed that no one had the possibility of betraying the alliance, but Roger knew that this was just an appearance. The Warcraft world is no stranger to high-level betrayals, and Roger didn't want to speculate maliciously about others, but he had to guard against it. High-level betrayal is too harmful. First, there was a high-level betrayal, then the power core of the Storm Keep was destroyed, a large number of demons were sent to attack Phalanran, and then Magtheridon was sent to attack Shattrath. Kil'jaeden's goal seems very obvious now, he's going for the Drania. Chapter 110. A Drania craftsman spread out blueprints, showing Roger the designs he had worked on overnight. These were the plans for the new Araco artillery that Roger and Adal had discussed the previous day, which Roger had named the rapid-fire cannon. This rapid-fire cannon only meets the rapid-fire requirement. We haven't found a way to launch barrage rounds yet. Have you tried engraving arcane barrage glyphs on it? We've tried, but the arcane barrage glyphs are incompatible with the rapid-fire glyphs. We haven't found a solution yet. Wouldn't it be better to make them separately? Roger was speechless. Did he have to guide them on such a simple matter? Even if they were too focused on the task at hand, they couldn't expect him to worry about everything. This incident revealed the Drania's straightforward nature. They only focused on completing the requirements without understanding how to adapt. This kind of personality ensured that the weapons they created were absolutely reliable, but it wasn't suitable for innovation. This was likely due to the influence of the Naru. For tens of thousands of years, the Naru had shown almost no innovation in technology. What they were like 10,000 years ago was what they were still like today. No wonder they were always defeated by the demons. Continue monitoring according to the original plan. After issuing the order, Roger quickly closed the communication crystal. He gathered the swords of Lothar, boarded the demon bane, and entered the Farallon Islands to support the Naru. The Naru had established a total of 5 mana forges on the Farallon Islands. Aera and Binar had already been occupied by demons, and the other 3 were under attack. Dior was located near the Tempest Keep docking point, and the Naru concentrated their forces to defend it. Even if the other 2 fell, the mana generated by Dior would be enough for Tempest Keep to make 1 warp. The other 2 mana forges were preserved because of reinforcements from the Alliance. Arklon was located near Area 52, and Kadjur led mages to reinforce it, driving back the demons. Telar was located on a mountain, with only 1 road leading up, so the demons could only attack from the sky. The Drania used their lives to hold off the demon attacks until Turalion arrived with his army. The demons and the Alliance forces were in a stalemate. As soon as the demon bane joined the battlefield, it reduced the defensive pressure on the Alliance. The Araco artillery specifically targeted the larger demons, quickly weakening the Burning Legion's main force. The demons in the sky received orders to attack the demon bane. Roger made a strong entrance, unleashing an arcane barrage with all his power in his first strike. Hundreds of thousands of arcane missiles shot into the sky, instantly killing demons within 1,000 meters, causing them to fall like raindrops. The battlefield suddenly cleared a region, shocking the demons. They turned to look at Roger, immediately sensing his powerful strength and a terrifying aura. The legendary level Demon Bane played a major role at this moment. Many demons trembled in fear at the sight of Roger, almost falling from the sky. Cowardly demons turned and fled the battlefield, preferring to be killed by the overseers than face Roger. In the rear of the demon camp, a tall figure appeared. Even as a mere projection, it exuded a terrifying pressure. Kil'jaeden frowned slightly as he watched the battle situation. Tichondrius, seeing his master displeased, quickly said, "It must be Roger's Kishan. Only he can cast such a powerful spell." "That Orc Slayer?" Kil'jaeden said with interest, "I heard Magtharidin once tried to recruit him." "Yes." Tichondrius said mockingly, "Magtharidin is really daydreaming. Roger's brother died at the hands of the orcs, how could he possibly pledge allegiance to the Legion? What if the Legion resurrected his brother?" Kil'jaeden asked thoughtfully. "Difficult." Tichondrius shook his head and said, "Not only did his brother, John Kishan, die at the hands of the orcs, but the elder Kishan couple also died at the hands of the orcs. Roger's hatred for the orcs is etched in his bones. Velan will definitely tell Rogers that the Legion instructed the orcs. That's a pity." Kil'jaeden looked into the distance with appreciation, "Since he cannot be used by the Legion, then kill him." Tichondrius bowed, "As you command, my master." Kil'jaeden's projection disappeared, and Tichondrius finally raised his head. His eyes were full of cunning as he looked at Anatheron, "Tell Magtharidin to speed up the pace of his attack. Zongarmersh, tell Ritter." This former Drania refuge was now filled with the flames of war. After entering Zongarmersh, Magtharidin immediately sent his troops to attack it. After the Drania returned to Shatrath, most of the people who came to tell Ritter to live were researchers who wanted to study the topography of Zongarmersh and find ways to restore the ecosystem. Suddenly attacked by demons, these researchers were unable to resist. Some people fled into the swamp, using their knowledge of the swamp to escape the demons' pursuit. However, the vast majority of the Drania were killed in Tel Ritter and on the road to escape. Magtheridin stood in the ruins of Tel Redder, wantonly waving his spear and destroying the buildings one by one. Since entering Draenor, he had not tasted the joy of destruction, and now that he had the opportunity, he naturally wanted to vent the displeasure in his heart. A portal opened beside him, and Anatheron stepped out. Magtheridin, the master is very dissatisfied with your efficiency. According to the plan, you should be under Shatrath city now. Magtheridin was annoyed that Anatheron disturbed his venting. That's your master, vampire. Anatheron sneered, try disobeying the master's orders. Magtheridin angrily raised the spear in his hand, pretending to chop Anatheron to death. Anatheron curled his lips in disdain and teleported away directly. Magtheridin slammed the spear on the ruins beside him, screaming in anger. However, he really didn't dare to disobey Kil'jaeden's orders. His direct superior, Archimonde the Defiler, was a general in the main force, but only the number 3 figure in the Burning Legion. Kil'jaeden was the number 2 figure and the commander-in-chief of the Burning Legion. As for Sargeras, this Dark Titan never directly commanded the Legion, he would only tell Kil'jaeden his combat intentions and then let Kil'jaeden execute them. Therefore, if he really disobeyed Kil'jaeden's power, the consequences would be more serious than not listening to Archimonde's orders. After venting for a while, he angrily issued an order, attack south, target Shatrath. Chapter 111. The city of Shatrath echoed with the clamor of alarm bells, and everyone sprang into action. Soldiers manned the defenses, ordinary citizens helped transport supplies, and Dallas stood upon the city walls, directing the battle. Holy light surged around Dallas, a clear indication that he had become a powerful paladin. As the only faith of humanity, the holy light was something Dallas had always adhered to, even though he wasn't a cleric. Previously, he had been occupied with governing the nation and waging war, so Dallas hadn't had the opportunity to delve deeply into the study of the holy light. However, after arriving in Shatrath, Dallas had very little to do, so he frequently listened to the teachings of Velan and Adal, thus embarking on the path of a paladin. The devout Dallas rarely left Shatrath, and even when the Alliance had matters to attend to, he would dispatch a deputy. The people of the Draenor Alliance had almost forgotten about Dallas, a high-ranking official, and no one had expected that Dallas now possessed strength comparable to Turalion. As a battle-hardened general, Dallas was not intimidated by the demons' offensive. He methodically directed the troops, repelling the demons' attacks time and again. Even when some flying demons managed to reach the city walls, Dallas led soldiers to drive them back down. The vanguard's setback did not surprise Magtheridin. He didn't expect the vanguard to capture Shatrath, he merely wanted them to confirm one thing: Shatrath did not possess Apex's cannons. Ever since being attacked by the demon Bane, Magtheridin had suffered from Apex's cannon syndrome. With his strength, he could withstand the attacks of Apex's cannons without any problem. However, the Apex's cannons had left a huge shadow in his mind. At that time, Roger was on the demon Bane, leading him to mistakenly believe that the aura of a teleportation-level demon Bane on Roger's body was emitted by the Apex's cannons, causing him to fear them. Now that he had confirmed that Shatrath was not equipped with Apex's cannons, Magtheridin's confidence surged. He personally commanded the army to launch a full-scale attack on Shatrath, with powerful Doomguards leading the charge and Eridar sorcerers summoning hellfire. Dallas, we can't hold on much longer. A Draenor guard captain shouted loudly. Dallas also frowned, having noticed this situation long ago. However, the number of troops he could command was too small. When Velan left, he took most of the Draenor army with him. And when the alliance was formed, Turalion also took away many human troops. With the forces he had at hand, he could only defend Shatrath. Once casualties occurred, defensive gaps would inevitably appear. If Shatrath were equipped with Apex's cannons, that would be great, but unfortunately, the ownership of the Apex's cannons belonged to the Araco and Roger. If the Draenor wanted Apex's cannons, they would have to pay a certain price. And relying on their possession of the Naru, the Draenor were not enthusiastic about Apex's cannons. Now, the Draenor were tasting the bitterness. Fortunately, Adal appeared in time, floating above the high tower and radiating powerful holy light. Under the shroud of holy light, the defending soldiers were blessed with blessing of kings and devotion aura. With increased strength, the defending soldiers' courage doubled, unleashing astonishing combat power. Magtheridin sneered, it's just a dying struggle. He raised his spear and launched a fell cannon at Adal. Adal quickly used a holy light shield to block the fell cannon, but Magtheridin's attack did not stop. Instead, he launched an even more powerful offensive. Boom boom boom. The continuous fell cannons shook Adal's holy light shield, and Adal trembled. Maintaining the blessings on the defending soldiers while also maintaining the holy light shield gradually depleted the holy light within him. However, at this moment, if he were to give up blessing the defending soldiers, Shatrath would inevitably fall. Therefore, Adal chose to sacrifice himself. Crack! The holy light shield shattered like glass, and the fell cannon struck Adal's body, knocking him from the sky and onto the platform of the high tower. Dallas rushed over, seeing the holy light on Adal's body beginning to transform into shadow. He quickly transferred the holy light from his body into Adal's, stopping Adal's entropy. However, without Dallas's command, the deployment of the defending soldiers went awry, and the demons quickly broke through the defenses. Only one could be saved between Shatrath and Adal. Adal urged, "Dallas, go and command the defense of the city." Dallas shook his head, saying, "Lord Adal, if Shatrath is breached, we can rebuild it, but if we lose you, we will lose direction." The soldiers immediately went to deliver the order. Seeing the defending soldiers retreat, Magtheridon was filled with complacency. Who no one can stop my advance. Invade the city, spare no enemies. The demons chased the defending soldiers into the city, and the war entered the stage of street fighting. Magtheridon strode towards Shatrath, his body as tall as the city walls. Then, he swung his spear, smashing the city walls, and as he passed through the collapsed gap, his wings destroyed the sentry towers on the city walls. Immersed in slaughter and destruction, the demons completely failed to notice an elf standing on the trees outside Shatrath. That Sala took out the communication crystal. "Your Excellency, I am one step late. Magtheridon has already invaded Shatrath." As soon as he finished speaking, Roger teleported to his side. "Your Excellency, if the demons capture Shatrath, they will enter the Black Temple through the portal," that Sala said anxiously. Roger waved his hand, "I know." After speaking, his figure disappeared, reappearing on the high tower of Shatrath. Looking down, he found Magtheridon's position, and Roger waved the scepter of Sargeras, a series of magic explosions erupting on the buildings around Magtheridon, forming a smoke that engulfed Magtheridon. Magtheridon was a little panicked, this change clearly not within his expectations. Just then, he suddenly felt a murderous intent coming from above. He suddenly raised his head, only to see a person descending from the sky with a weapon, slashing down at him. Damn it! It was that Rogers? He hurriedly raised his spear above his head, trying to block Rogers' attack. Roger sneered, activating Flame Body and Flame Blade, his whole body wrapped in flames. With a roar, he activated Endless Fury, and then used all his strength to slash down with the Demon Bane sword. Crack! The spear was split in half, and the Demon Bane sword continued to slash onto Magtheridon's head. The flames penetrated Magtheridon's brain, impacting the fell fire inside. Magtheridon roared, suddenly erupting a large amount of fell fire, impacting all around. Boom! In a loud noise, Magtheridon was blown to pieces. The fog of the explosion dissipated, leaving only a huge skeleton to prove Magtheridon's existence. Chapter 112. After killing the Abyss Lord Magtheridon, the Master Yi's level increased by 3, reaching level 60. Master Yi's skills can be upgraded to the legendary level. Received 10 skill points. Roger didn't hesitate at all and directly upgraded Wuju's style to the legendary level and Endless Fury to the Grandmaster level. The skill improvement wasn't the main gain, reaching level 60 was. With Master Yi reaching level 60, Roger felt his melee combat ability had reached a profound stage. Even without using any sword skills, he could take the enemy general's head from amidst an army. Of course, this was just a feeling, and the actual effect still needed to be tested. However, as a demigod, Roger's senses were very accurate. Magtheridon's death caused the demons to flee without a fight. Roger stood on the high tower, cooperating with the garrison to kill demons and reclaim Shatrath. After stabilizing Adal's transformation, Dallas quickly walked to Roger's side. "Roger, if you hadn't arrived in time, Shatrath would have been in danger." Roger looked at Dallas with some surprise. "It's been 2 years since we last met, and you've become a paladin." Dallas smiled, "You said it yourself, it's been 2 years since we last met." Roger didn't dwell on Dallas's transformation. Possessing the time divinity, he could better understand the saying, "Time can change everything." Just as Roger and Dallas were reminiscing, Anat Heron revealed a triumphant smile on a distant mountain and teleported away. "Farinlin, Monaforge Era." The demons had established a new camp here, and the artificers were using the Maniforged's machinery to produce fell cannons. Originally, the demons weren't interested in such technological products because using fell cannons couldn't satisfy their desire for slaughter, nor did it conform to the demons' habit of worshipping the strong. Therefore, no matter how intelligent Malga and Gangle were, they could only be low-level demons, even inferior to their variant demon guards. However, after witnessing the power of the Apex's cannons, the demons seemed to start valuing artificers. Tichondrius wanted to see the scene of thousands of cannons attacking simultaneously, and the defensive system of the Arcatraz filled him with interest. Anat Heron teleport back. Roger has been lured away. He killed Magtheridon. Very good. Tichondrius wasn't saddened at all by Magtheridon's death, he was even beaming with joy. He said to Anat Heron, I will attract the enemy's attention for you, I'll leave the Arcatraz to you. Anat Heron raised his eyebrows. As a member of the same race, he understood Tichondrius too well. This guy must be playing some trick again, but Anat Heron still agreed. Attacking the Arcatraz and capturing Alyria and Arcatraz were tasks given by Lord Kil'jaeden. If he could complete the task, he would inevitably receive the Master's appreciation. If he couldn't complete it, at most, he would just die once. Since he could be resurrected, what was he afraid of? It was a risk with a small price, so Anat Heron had no reason not to try it. Watching Anat Heron leave, Tichondrius finally smiled. The reason he didn't go himself was because he had doubts. He had just seen Roger on the Demolisher, so how could he have gone to Shattrath in a short while? Killing Magtheridon would take some time, so he deduced that Roger must have hidden abilities that were unknown to others. Therefore, he judged that attacking the Arcatraz was a very dangerous thing, so he handed this seemingly tempting task to Anat Heron. If Anat Heron completed the task, he could share some of the credit. If Anat Heron failed, he wouldn't have any responsibility, he could just push it all onto Anat Heron. This kind of barrage cannon completely countered Anatheron's tactics, and Anat Heron felt like he was being targeted. Could it be that Tichondrius had already discovered this, so he gave him the opportunity to attack the Arcatraz? Anat Heron was a little annoyed, he had been schemed against by Tichondrius again. However, he wouldn't just give up. Since he couldn't break through from the outside, he would break through from the inside. Through the perspective of the low-level demons, Anat Heron had a general understanding of the situation on the Arcatraz. He had the Eridar mages summon infernals to interfere with the Arcatraz, and relying on the interference of the infernals, Anat Heron teleported to a corner of the Arcatraz. After hiding his form, Anat Heron quickly discovered a lone soldier. He controlled the soldier to walk over and possess the soldier's body. He only had two targets, Alyria and Arcatraz. Alyria was commanding the battle on the deck, and there were a large number of soldiers nearby, making it difficult to attack. So Anat Heron set his sights on Arcatraz. He walked into the cabin and began searching for Arcatraz's tracks. Everyone in the cabin was busy, and the artificers were constantly providing arcanite crystals for the cannons. Anat Heron didn't choose to get close because Arcatraz wouldn't appear in these areas. He continued searching until he found a room guarded by two high elf rangers. Why are you here? The elf looked at the soldier possessed by Anat Heron with some doubt. I am under General Alyria's orders. Anat Heron said as he approached, casting a spell to put the two elves to sleep. Anat Heron triumphantly pushed open the door guarded by the elves and couldn't help but hum a children's song, Little Bunny, be good. Open the door. Someone inside the room continued the children's song. Anat Heron froze at the door. Not only was Arcatraz in the room, but Roger was also there. Roger didn't even look at Anat Heron. I thought Magtheridon died a little too easily, as expected, you still had a backup plan. Originally, Roger felt something was wrong when he was talking to Dallas. He immediately teleported back to the Arcatraz, just in time for the demons' attack. He played along, staying in the cabin to see what the demons wanted to do. Tichondrius used a plan within a plan, and Roger also used a plan within a plan. In the end, it was Anat Heron who suffered. At this moment, Anat Heron felt so wronged. Chapter 113. Boom! A large hole exploded in the deck of the Arathor, and Anat Heron flew into the sky from the hole. He didn't fly up on his own, he was knocked up by someone. Reaching the highest point, Anat Heron began to fall. He hurriedly flapped his tattered wings to steady himself. Anat Heron looked down in horror. He had cast 6 or 7 spells at Roger and Arathor, but none of them could break through Roger's magic shield. Roger, with just one punch, sent him flying out of the ship's cabin. Roger's strength was already irresistible. Anat Heron turned and ran. However, before he could fly far, Roger's arcane hand grabbed him back. Anat Heron transformed into a swarm of bats, breaking free from the arcane hand. Just as the bats were about to scatter, Roger teleported over, unleashing his full arcane power, enveloping all the bats. Arcane power formed a whirlwind around Roger, grinding all the bats into powder. The spell was broken, and Anatheron's figure was revealed. His body was tattered and torn, and he looked at Roger in fear. "Rogers, please stop." Roger tilted his head and looked at him. "I know it's useless to say anything now," Anat Heron said hurriedly, "but aren't you curious why I had to attack the Arathor? Tell me." Roger gave him a chance. Anat Heron said, "This is all a plot by my master, Kil'jaeden. He wants to capture your family to coerce you into joining the Burning Legion." "I guessed it." Roger said indifferently, "If you can't say anything useful, you can die." Anat Heron waved his hand hurriedly, "Lord Rogers, if you don't kill me, I can help you gather information about the Legion." Roger raised his eyebrows, somewhat tempted. Just then, the inside of Kadger's fortress suddenly became restless. Roger looked at Anat Heron with a cold face. "Are you stalling for time?" "No, I didn't." But Roger didn't give him a chance to explain. Arcane power directly tore Anatheron's body apart, sending him back to the twisting nether. After killing Anat Heron, Roger landed on the deck. Killed Dreadlord Anat Heron, Arcane Master level increased. Gained skill, Blood Siphon Aura. Blood Siphon Aura, passive skill, life magic. Within the aura range, you can intercept part of the life force lost by the enemy to restore the injuries of yourself and your allies. Interesting. Aurelia walked over. "Has something happened in Kadger's fortress?" Roger nodded, casually patched the hole in the deck, and then said, "I'll go see what happened." Aurelia nodded. She was a little worried. There were many treasures of Dalaran inside Kadger's fortress. If the demons stole them, who knows what kind of storm would arise. When Roger teleported to Kadger's fortress, the castle was already in chaos. The thorn beasts raised by the mages were running around, but the mages couldn't care less about them, and were all looking for the enemies who had sneaked in. "What happened?" Roger stopped a few mages and asked. The mages saw Roger and hurriedly saluted. "Lord Rogers, the demons stole the Book of Medivh," the mages said in panic. The Book of Medivh contained many dangerous spells, opening the dark portal was just one of them. So the mages were very panicked. They had to retrieve the Book of Medivh, otherwise they would not be able to explain to Kadger. Roger was not surprised at all. The demons were very persistent about the Book of Medivh. Later, they even directed the undead army to break through Dalaran and seize the Book of Medivh, and then summoned Archimonde. What's going on? Sargeras, with such strong strength, didn't have other ways to summon? Couldn't he just write a spell book himself and let the Dreadlords bring it over? It had been said before that it was to summon Archimonde. If that's the case, then Kil'jaeden replaced Nazul with someone else to become the Lich King. That is to say, history corrected itself. Kel'Thuzad would inevitably spread the Scourge Plague, Arthas would eventually fall, Lord Aeron would inevitably be destroyed, the High Elves would inevitably suffer disaster, and Sylvanas would inevitably die. Roger's face turned cold. The so-called historical correction theory was just someone pushing it behind the scenes. Now Roger was even more certain that someone must be at work for him to stay in the River of Time for so long. The mastermind behind the scenes did not dare to face Roger directly, and could only tamper with the River of Time. Roger sneered in his heart, "I'll see what you're capable of." Tichondrius teleported back to the demon camp, flipping through the Book of Medivh in his hand with satisfaction. Anatheron's death was his inescapable responsibility, but with the Book of Medivh, he believed that the master would not pursue his responsibility. After all, with the Book of Medivh, the master's next plan could be carried out. An Eridar mage teleported over. "Lord Tichondrius, Kadger is leading the mages to attack this way." Tichondrius rolled his eyes. "You lead the people to block Kadger and hold the position." After speaking, he teleported away directly. The Eridar mage was a little dazed, but Tichondrius's order could not be disobeyed. He could only bite the bullet and direct the demons to fight. Then the mages who lost the Book of Medivh did not care about their own casualties at all, and chose the most powerful spells, not hesitating to perish together with the demons. Kadger was like an enraged lion, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, and every spell used the maximum mana, pursuing a quick battle and quick resolution. Boom! The huge fireball cleared the demons in front of him. Kadger immediately rushed forward along the cleared path, ignoring the demons next to him. Because the mages would help him block the demons on both sides, and Roger was behind him to protect him. Roger shook his head helplessly. According to the Dreadlord's character, Tichondrius had already run away. Kadger must also know, but he was unwilling. Just right, Roger also planned to capture the demon camp and end this unnecessary war. With Kadger charging forward, he was happy to clear the obstacles for him from behind. Sargeras' scepter was waved, and one magic explosion after another was thrown to the place with the most demons. Although killing these low-level demons did not give any experience, Roger was still constantly mowing the grass. Reality is not a game. The more demons he killed, the more mages he would save, and the more sparks the Alliance could retain. The Scourge was about to appear, and Azeroth would once again fall into crisis. Preserving more sparks in Draenor would allow it to recover faster in the future. Under the leadership of the mages, the Alliance advanced triumphantly, directly capturing the demon camp transformed by the mana furnace Ella. At this time, the demons' fell cannons had not yet been completed, all the demon craftsmen were slaughtered by the Allied forces, and the materials for manufacturing the fell cannons were all taken into the Alliance's bag. Chapter 114. The Eridar mage couldn't hold the line, nor did he have the command ability. The Burning Legion's best at marching and fighting were the Abyssal Lords under Archimonde. Never mind that these dullards weren't the brightest, they seemed born for war. Dreadlords were schemers, and their suitable role was as advisors. Eridar mages, like the Draenia, were powerful, but their war sense was terrible. They were fine as mages, but commanding armies was just delivering food. You have to know that they were facing battle-hardened soldiers, the most outstanding commanders in the world. Turalion was a young genius, able to command tens of thousands of troops at a young age. Kadger was a genius mage, able to gain the power of the Guardian through his own accumulation. As for Rogers, needless to say, he often won with fewer troops, fooling the enemy. Except when facing overwhelming advantages, he never failed. Not to mention these three, even the Elven Rangers leading the various squads had more strategic minds than him. Facing an army led by a group of excellent commanders, how could he win? All he could do was resist desperately, and if he couldn't resist, he would run away. Kadger rushed into the demon camp first, but didn't find any trace of the Book of Medivh, and only then did he completely give up. Rogers, the demons have stolen the Book of Medivh, we must think of a countermeasure. Roger nodded, that's natural. Let's end this war first. Turalion is attacking the demons gathered at the Storm Spire, and I need you to lead troops to recover the Mana Forge Binar. Kadger nodded, okay, after we kill all the demons, we'll discuss this matter. Standing at the highest point of Arak, Roger looked towards Gorgrond. These demons crossed over from the dark portal in Gorgrond. Could it be that they have already dealt with the Gron there? He took out the communication crystal and contacted Alyria. Honey, how much information has the Alliance gathered about Gorgrond in the past 2 years? Alyria thought for a moment, not much, because the Gron have always been entrenched in Gorgrond. To avoid conflict with these big guys, the Alliance rarely scouts Gorgrond. However, the Tempest Keep has been using magic to scout the situation in Gorgrond, perhaps the Naru knows something. Roger shook his head slightly. If the Naru knew something, the power core wouldn't have been destroyed. Where's Garona? In the Black Temple. Since killing Grommash, she has been teaching scouts in the Black Temple. Not getting the information he wanted, Roger had to rely on himself. He cast Farsight, looking towards Gorgrond. The eastern part of Gorgrond had a mountain range blocking Roger's view, but through the gaps in the mountains, he still found some clues. In southern Gorgrond, there were still a large number of Gron active. These behemoths rampaged across the plains, blocking the Alliance's path forward. But in the north, Roger didn't even see the shadow of a Gron, only fortresses built by demons. On the fortresses, countless fell cannons were moving, as if even a mosquito couldn't escape their detection. The Alliance previously thought that the Gron would fight the demons as equals, just like the orcs and ogres. Now it seems that these big guys are completely wimps. Roger cast a spell, projecting the image to the highest point of the eastern mountain range. Using the projection's vision, Roger cast Farsight again. The entire situation of the demon fortress came into view. This was a vast fortress, far exceeding Hellfire Citadel. And it had strong defenses. Not to mention the tens of thousands of demons inside, just the fell cannons alone numbered in the thousands. Roger guaranteed that if the Alliance attacked this fortress, they probably wouldn't even withstand one round of fell cannon bombardment. A bit troublesome. But not completely unsolvable. The Alliance needs a new type of weapon. As long as it can be manufactured, the problem of the fortress can be easily solved. He recorded the image of the demon fortress, preparing to play it when he called a meeting later. At this time, his communication crystal rang. It was Nubatun, who was helping the elemental spirits recover at the elemental throne. Lord Rogers, I have something I want to tell you. Roger became curious. What is it? Nubatun said, I just saw your mount fly out to take a bath. My mount? Roger was stunned, and asked a little vigilantly, are you talking about the 2 black dragons? Not 2, only 1. Nubatun said, it flew to Sunspring Lake. Roger interrupted him, what you saw is not my mount. Not your mount? Then what is it? It's the enemy. Roger looked at the 2 magical reins in his hand. These were the only 2 dragons in Draenor. Although Roger often used the spirit of life to accelerate their growth, their bodies were already adults, but their minds were still stuck in the wormling stage, only thinking about playing and not wanting to reproduce. The black dragon that Nubatun saw was obviously not a black dragon, but a variant of the bronze dragon, the infinite dragon. Because they feared the end time, the bronze dragons would eventually be corrupted by the old gods, infected with the power of shadow, and their skin would turn black, which made Nubatun mistake it for a black dragon. The orcs in Hala saw the black dragon descending and fled in panic. The black dragon landed, and Roger stood on the black dragon and asked, did a black dragon come here just now? Under Roger's power, the orcs dared not speak. Only an old crone came out, that's right, a black dragon came over just now. It took Garrosh away. As expected. Roger looked at the old crone with a stern face, are you a shaman? Can you track Garrosh's whereabouts? The old crone shook her head, I'm sorry, I tried to track Garrosh's whereabouts, but I failed. Failed? Roger frowned. The old crone said, that's right, I failed. And the failure was very strange, as if Garrosh had already been killed, but I couldn't feel Garrosh's soul. Is that black dragon your mount? Please find it as soon as possible. Garrosh is an orphan and is already pitiful enough. Don't let him suffer a terrible fate again. Roger had already confirmed his previous thoughts in his heart. That infinite dragon was indeed Karaz. He kidnapped Garrosh, still wanting to try to build a new horde. It's just, what's the use of kidnapping a young Garrosh? Lord, the old crone pleaded, her hollow eyes seemed to be able to feel Roger's emotions. Roger said lightly, whether Garrosh will encounter a terrible fate again is not up to me, but up to himself. The old crone was stunned for a moment, obviously not understanding Roger's words. Roger was not in the mood to explain. He tugged the reins, and the black dragon soared into the sky. Chapter 115. At Stormspire, the Alliance convened the Second Alliance Conference. Muru, as the host, warmly welcomed the Alliance leaders, saying, thank you for your help. You are the Naru's eternal friends. Velan presided over the meeting, stating, the demonic attack took us by surprise. They deceived Stormspire's reconnaissance systems, causing us to fail to detect the demonic fortress. The Draenei bear undeniable responsibility for this. We will learn from this lesson, and I will dispatch rangers to scout Gorgrond to gather as much information as possible. There's no need to rush. Turalion said. We've all seen the footage recorded by Rogers. If we can't find a way to deal with this fortress, even the most meticulous reconnaissance will be useless. Kadger added, that's right. I've never seen such a heavily fortified fortress. Fell cannons and Apex's cannons share the same weakness, they consume a lot of energy, making them wasteful against small combat units. But this isn't a problem for the demons, because our forces are limited. They gain an advantage even if they kill just one of us with a single shot. Therefore, we need to find a way to counter the fell cannons, otherwise, we have no ability to attack the demonic fortress. Velan nodded, turning to Rogers. Sir, do you have any ideas? Rogers shook his head, not revealing the truth. He suspected there was a traitor among the Draenei leadership, so he wouldn't disclose his plan. If the demons were forewarned, success would be difficult. Reconnaissance is still necessary. Understanding the situation in Gorgrond will allow us to adapt our strategy accordingly. However, the immediate priority is to find a suitable location to establish a base, preferably near the Fair alone, so our support can arrive more quickly." The others nodded. This war had shown them that their previous strategy was flawed. If the Alliance had established a base in Gorgrond earlier, they would have detected the demon's presence. Kurdran slapped his forehead, offering Rogers an apologetic toast. Rogers didn't mind, raising his glass to meet Kurdran's before draining it. The Drania didn't enjoy drinking. The drink was beer that Kurdran brought, brewed using materials from near the Airy Peak. The taste wasn't great, but in the barren drainer, these were some of the few plants that could be used to make alcohol. The Alliance had enough food, so brewing wasn't a problem. However, everyone had suffered enough hardships and feared a food crisis would arise again, so most of the food was stored away. After a period of rest and reorganization, the Alliance immediately advanced towards the Everbloom Wilds. As the Allied forces landed on the beach, a large group of Sporealings emerged from the Everbloom Wilds. The Demon Slayer quickly activated its Apex's cannons, ready to fire if the Sporealings attacked. Just as a battle seemed imminent, Rogers stepped forward, releasing a large amount of life energy, enveloping the Sporealings. The Sporealings looked at Rogers in surprise. They had never seen such a vibrant life form. Immediately, they jumped up in joy, bowing down to Rogers. The newly enlightened Sporealings regarded Rogers as their god, leading them to prosperity. Rogers used life energy to communicate with the Sporealings, and they obeyed his every command. Soon, the Sporealings cleared a large open space, allowing the Alliance to build a camp there. Rogers created a forest around the camp, then guided the life force of the Sporelings forest into it. Quickly, the trees drew roots from the ground, gathered their branches and leaves, and turned into treants, walking before Rogers. Gain skill summon treant. A druid's skill? Rogers raised an eyebrow. Had he brought the druid class to Draenor? Great God, please tell us your name, and we will forever sing your praises. The treants knelt on the ground, looking at Rogers with reverence. My name is Rogers Kishan, you can also call me Orc Slayer, Rogers told the treants. The treants excitedly said, Great God, we will follow your call and kill all the orcs. Rogers was stunned for a moment. Did they have hearing problems? Orc Slayer was just a title. Although he had told Rend Blackhand that he would change his surname to Orc Slayer, this world didn't place much emphasis on surnames. Uther's previous surname wasn't Lightbringer either. Lightbringer was just his title, but after everyone called him that, they forgot his original surname. But Rogers was different. Although Orc Slayer was impressive, it didn't fully reflect Rogers' characteristics. Therefore, people rarely called him Orc Slayer, preferring to call him General Kishan, so he only mentioned Orc Slayer when introducing himself. He never expected to meet treants today who took this title seriously, which Rogers hadn't anticipated. Feeling that these treants had some intelligence issues, Rogers raised his hand to bless them with arcane magic, using arcane intellect to enlighten their minds. During the time they were building the camp, Rogers taught these treants life magic. In the future, they would be the spokespeople for life in this world, focusing on restoring Draenor's ecology. As long as the treants could complete this task, Rogers could free up time to do other things. At the same time, Rogers didn't forget the Sporealings. He also used life magic to accelerate their evolution, and soon they broke free from ignorance and evolved into dryads. The dryads matured by magic were different from the native dryads. They not only had the savagery of Draenor's native life spirits but also possessed the reason and mission that Rogers endowed them with. The dryads assisted the Alliance in building the camp, hoping to learn knowledge from these intelligent races. The Alliance soldiers were also very curious about these new creatures and were willing to teach them some life philosophies and ways of working. Under the guidance of Rogers and the Alliance, the treants and dryads grew rapidly. They were naturally able to evoke the spirits of life, so their natural magic could repair the earth. Soon, under Rogers' orders, the treants and dryads were sent to various regions of Draenor to repair the wounds of the earth. Chapter 116. After the victory of the Battle of Farallon, the Alliance not only built the Evergrowth Woods camp but also reoccupied Hellfire Citadel. However, Hellfire Citadel was entirely covered by Fel energy, and the Allied forces needed to purify the Fel energy bit by bit before they could completely occupy this fortress. The elemental spirits recovered their strength quickly. The Shattered Shaman, along with the elemental spirits, advanced towards the most hostile part of this continent, preparing to repair the cracks in the earth and sky. Accompanying them were also the treants. The treants were once enemies of the elemental spirits, but now they are good helpers. Nubitan led a team deep into Zungar Marsh, the place where the powerful life spirit Zungar fell. Zungar's powerful vitality spawned a large number of spores, scattered in the ocean. However, due to the idleness of the environment, the spore forest could only barely survive and could not expand. Later, because the fell energy affected the elemental spirits, it turned the Zungar Sea into Zungar Marsh. The spore forest saw the light of day again and quickly multiplied. Zungar Marsh was sparsely populated, and soon became the world of the spore forest. However, the good times did not last long. The demons from Frostfire Ridge came. The weakness of the spore eelings aroused the demons' desire for slaughter. Even the weakest imp could easily kill a spore eeling. As the basic infantry of the Burning Legion, the demon guards could easily eliminate a settlement. When Magtheridon led the demon army to attack Terakar Forest, all the spore forests along the march were destroyed, and all the spore eelings were slaughtered. After Magtheridon was killed, many demons fled back to Zungar Marsh. After learning of Magtheridon's death, the demons of Frostfire Ridge immediately chose to shrink back into Zungar Marsh. The concept of hierarchy engraved in their genes made the spore eelings submit to the treants and tell them about the evil deeds of the demons. After the treants reported to Nubitan, Nubitan immediately decided to go to Serpent Lake to stop the demons' conspiracy. When they arrived at the Fell Lake day and night, the lake water of the Fell Lake had already been severely polluted and was spreading to the surrounding lakes and rivers. Nubitan quickly ordered the water elemental spirits to control the water flow and suspend the spread of the fell energy. He also ordered the earth elemental spirits to cut off the river and block the waterway from Serpent Lake to other lakes and rivers. The fire elemental spirits and wind elemental spirits burned the fell energy in the soil on the lakeside to prevent the fell energy from continuing to permeate. The treants conducted research to find a way to restore the ecology. However, the treants did not transform the ecology like Evergrowth Woods, but prepared to restore the spore forest. Although Roger influenced their thinking, they were still naturally close to spores. Although the spore eelings were untamed, they were still confident in educating them. At first, the spore eelings would still attack the shattered and the elemental spirits. However, their weak strength could not harm the shattered shaman at all. As for the elemental spirits, they did not take their former enemies seriously at all. Except for the earth elemental spirits, the sporelings' attacks on other elemental spirits would only be counterattacked by the active elements on the elemental spirits. Under the teaching of the treants, the spore eelings gradually realized that the shattered and the elemental spirits were their own people, and the attack incidents gradually decreased. The shattered tolerated the spore eelings for Roger's sake. The treants were Roger's people, and the spore eelings were the treants' people, which was roughly equivalent to Roger's people. The demons quickly discovered the actions of the shattered shaman and the treants. They did not allow their actions to be destroyed by a group of mortals. Doom Guards drove Hellhounds and Demon Guards launched an attack on the Atoll Lagoon camp where the Shattered were located. The Hellhounds were specifically aimed at the elemental spirits. They would absorb the mana of the elemental spirits and then kill them. The Demon Guards charged into the camp, attacking the Shattered and the treants. The treants commanded the spore eelings to block the Demon Guards. The treants' natural spells commanded the strong roots to entangle the Demon Guards, and the spore eelings swarmed up, using spears to stab the Demon Guards into sieves. Although the Demon Guards were powerful, they could only be submerged in the ocean of spore eelings after being trapped by the roots. The spore eelings, who were often bullied by the demons, suddenly had a sense of revenge. They rushed towards the demons frantically, wanting to kill all the demons. However, they took themselves too seriously. A hellfire smashed into the spore eelings, and the shockwave nuked a piece of spore eelings. The hellfire stood up and roared at the spore eelings. The spore eelings instantly retreated. The treants were very angry when they saw this scene. They immediately mobilized the life spirits and created a more powerful root to entangle the hellfire. Although the fell fire on the hellfire could consume the life spirits, the thick roots strangled the hellfire into rubble at an extremely fast speed. Boom boom boom. Hellfires fell into the camp one after another, and after standing up, they launched an attack on the treants. The treants did not have time to mobilize the life spirits and could only retreat temporarily. At this time, earth elemental spirits rushed over and collided with the hellfires. The two sides punched each other, and the earth elemental spirits resisted the fell fire of the hellfires and defeated them. Other elemental spirits also rushed over to help the treants guard the camp. Nubitan led the shaman closely behind, and they defeated the hellhounds and rescued the elemental spirits. Under the coordination of the shaman, the elemental spirits, and the treants, they finally repelled the demons' attack. But the war was not over. The two sides launched a battle for control centered on Serpent Lake. Nubitan wanted to defeat the demons and purify the fell energy in the fell lake. The demons wanted to defeat the allied forces and spread the fell energy in the fell lake. The two sides fought back and forth. The demons could not capture the Atoll Lagoon camp, and Nubitan could not occupy the fell lake. But overall, the demons still had the advantage. They were not only powerful, but also able to obtain fell energy from the fell lake, and their mana recovered quickly. If it were not for the shaman constantly summoning elemental spirits, the Atoll Lagoon camp would have been breached long ago. Fortunately, the Drania rebuilt Terakar Forest, and the rangers of Terakar Forest joined the war. Only then did the alliance gain the upper hand, but soon the demons divided their forces to attack the Spore-Eeling colony in the western Zungar Marsh, and the Treants had to leave the Atoll Lagoon and rescue the Spore-Eelings there. The Treants established a camp between the Spore Forest and the Fell Lake, blocking the demons' advance towards the Spore Forest. In this way, the Atoll Lagoon, Terakar Forest and the Treant camp formed a battle line, dividing Zungar Marsh into two with the demons. Chapter 117. Draenor welcomed a brief period of peace, but both sides were actively preparing for war. Once preparations were complete, war would inevitably break out again. In the Black Temple, Dwarven and Drania artisans were busy at work, with human artisans assisting. They had received Roger's orders to manufacture new weapons. The demon fortress was heavily fortified and difficult to attack head-on, so the only option was to outsmart them. The only way to outsmart them was to destroy the demon fortress's defenses from a location that the fell cannons couldn't reach. Currently, there were only two options. Kurdran proposed manufacturing mortars with a long enough range, using the mountains as cover, and utilizing the mortar's curved trajectory for attacks. However, there was a difficulty: the existing mortars weren't large enough. Therefore, Kurdran sent all the dwarven artisans he brought to the Black Temple, hoping to create giant mortars with the help of the Black Temple's mature artisan system. Building cannons wasn't the forte of the Bronzebeard dwarves, but the dwarves' racial talent was smithing. If they didn't have much experience building cannons, they would just keep trying. Velan suggested rebuilding the mana forges to accelerate the charging of Tempest Keep. As long as Tempest Keep had enough power, it could strike the demon fortress from the air. However, Roger rejected the proposal to deploy Tempest Keep. Firstly, Tempest Keep took too long to charge. Waiting for Tempest Keep to charge would take longer than using Nara technology to build a spaceship. It would be faster, and the area exposed to attack would be smaller. Secondly, Tempest Keep was a spaceship, and using it to deal with the demon fortress was a bit of overkill. If Tempest Keep was damaged, the allied forces would lose their chance to escape into the void. Velan and the Naru agreed with Roger's proposal to build a spaceship that could ascend into the air. Both suggestions were good and worth trying. Therefore, Roger brought the research for both projects to the Black Temple and personally oversaw them. In addition, Roger was secretly conducting a new research project. Regardless of whether it was a giant mortar or a spaceship, they were just methods of attack. What truly destroyed the demon fortress was the ammunition they fired. Without sufficiently powerful ammunition, even with giant mortars and spaceships, they still wouldn't be able to break through the demon fortress. Back in Azeroth, Roger had wanted to create magic bombs that could wipe out all the orcs with a single throw. However, because Roger's understanding of arcane magic wasn't deep enough, he hadn't made any progress. Later, after obtaining the Dragon Soul, its immense power gave Roger enough offensive capability, and he gradually abandoned the idea of creating magic bombs. After entering Draenor, the Dragon Soul's power diminished, and Roger once again had the idea of creating magic bombs. But because he himself was strong enough and had been very busy, he shelved the idea again. Now, with the giant cannons needing ammunition and the spaceship needing bombs for bombardment, Roger put the matter of magic bombs back on the agenda. As time passed, both projects finally yielded results. However, because the giant cannons needed to be tested, they weren't announced to the public yet. Before the spaceship took off, Roger invited the Alliance High Command to attend the launch ceremony. The Drania seemed particularly interested in the launch ceremony. Velan came, and the remaining two archbishops also came. Murad rarely left Ochine down. In addition to attending the launch ceremony, he also had discussions with Kala, as if the Drania had something they needed to tell Kala. The other archbishop was Uthiar. Uthiar had retreated with Velan, so he wasn't killed by the orcs or corrupted by fell energy. He was the governor of Shatrath and an important member of the Alder. He had always insisted on contacting the Naru, which allowed them to contact Tempest Keep. Therefore, Uthiar's status among the Drania was second only to Velan. Roger received all the honored guests, and then he pulled Velan and Turalion into a guest room to discuss the attack on the demon fortress. While they were discussing, the guests left their seats one after another. Led by the Drania artisans, they toured the spaceship that was scheduled to launch tomorrow. The Drania artisans led everyone around the spaceship, completely unaware that one person was missing from the crowd. The next day, the spaceship launch ceremony began. The spaceship had just ascended, and before it reached 100 meters, it suddenly lost control and crashed straight to the ground. Ah! The onlookers screamed and scattered. Roger and Kadger jointly cast levitation spells to prevent the spaceship from crashing to the ground. The Alliance High Command looked at each other with lingering fear. Turalion said in a deep voice, "It seems that the spaceship technology is not yet mature. Let's postpone the attack on the demon fortress for now." Roger was about to explain, but Turalion had already walked into the portal. Velan also silently shook his head. "Rogers, let's take our time. Don't be too hasty. We can't waste any more lives." Uthiar and Murad followed Velan through the portal back to Shatrath. The artisans rushed onto the spaceship to check what was wrong. Roger angrily opened a portal and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was on a mountain near Everbloom. Looking at the demon fortress in the distance, Roger smiled disdainfully. This was all his plan. Velan and Turalion were just helping him act. After the magic bomb was successfully developed, Roger prepared this plan. After 2 months of accumulation, Roger created a super magic bomb. According to Roger's estimation, detonating this super magic bomb would be enough to destroy the entire demon fortress. To avoid accidents and to find the traitor in the Drania High Command, Roger staged this scene. Now that the traitor had been identified, there was no need to leave the demon fortress around. Using farsight, Roger found a blind spot that was not easily discovered by the demons and opened a portal. Then, he sent the super magic bomb to the other side of the portal, ignited it, and closed the portal. Next, he just had to wait. The demons who had just received news from the traitor didn't know that death was approaching. They were still busy as usual. Until the earth began to shake, they realized that something was wrong. But it was already too late. Chapter 118. Roger stood on the mountaintop, carefully observing the location of the magic bomb. A powerful energy wave passively emanated, causing the space near the magic bomb to fluctuate violently. It then frantically absorbed the surrounding energy, contracting inward before suddenly exploding. A powerful shockwave devastated the demon fortress's structures, pulverizing countless demons. The towering walls failed to withstand the impact, collapsing under the force. The fell cannons on the walls were torn to shreds, becoming accomplices in the explosion and scattering debris beyond the fortress. These fragments bombarded the demon-built watchtowers, destroying them. A mushroom cloud rose, the smoke from the explosion obscuring the ruins of the demon fortress. Only then did the earth tremble, almost causing Roger to lose his footing. Rumble. The sound of the explosion arrived last, so loud it seemed capable of shattering heaven and earth. Amidst the explosion, Roger turned and teleported away. After the portal vanished, the billowing smoke and dust soared into the sky, rising higher than a mountain next to the peak. Thick dust rained down, completely covering the mountaintop and concealing Roger's footprints. In Everbloom Wilds, the treants dodged the falling dust, and the wisps retreated into the barracks. However, the low-lying barracks seemed insignificant compared to the all-encompassing dust, and were soon completely submerged. The treants hurriedly clawed away the dust, rescuing the Alliance soldiers inside. Even so, some people fainted from suffocation. Fortunately, there were many spellcasters in the Alliance, providing numerous means of healing, preventing any fatalities. In southern Gorgrond, the Grond were startled by the explosion. Looking up at the mushroom cloud, their small minds were filled with questions. Only when the smoke gradually dissipated did they realize one thing: the demons who had driven them away seemed to be in trouble. Black rock ore is the best metal ore. Weapons forged from it are hard and sharp. Even ordinary artisans can create excellent weapons. If it falls into the hands of a good blacksmith, the weapons will be at least epic grade. Gromash's Gorehowl was made of black rock ore. Although it was epic grade, it possessed abilities exceeding that grade, which is why Gromash was able to use it to kill Manoroth. The Grond paid no attention to the black rock ore. They cared about their territory. Even though no living beings could exist on this land, they still walked it again. They themselves did not feed on living creatures. Their true food was the corpses of Magnaron. Extracting just a little energy from a Magnaron corpse was enough for them to survive for a long time. There were originally many Magnaron corpses here, buried underground, but the explosion had thrown these corpses to the surface. Even though the corpses were broken into many pieces, it made it easier for the Graan to collect them. Several days later, the Alliance arrived. The craftsmen were overjoyed to see the black rock ore. They told the Alliance High Command that if they collected all the black rock ore, the Alliance would never have to worry about weapons again. So Turalion sent troops to collect the black rock ore, but they were soon discovered by the Graan collecting Magnaron corpses. The Graan are behemoths with a very strong sense of territory. They attack any creatures that invade their territory. Upon discovering the Graan, the Alliance immediately retreated to their temporary camp. The Graan pursued them to the camp, and Turalion, to avoid casualties, immediately ordered a retreat. After Roger returned to the Black Temple, he originally intended to deal with the Drania traitor, Uthiar. The failure of the ship's launch was due to Uthiar's sabotage. To deceive the demons, Roger had temporarily spared Uthiar. Now it was time to eliminate Uthiar, this hidden danger. However, just as he was about to discuss this matter with Velan, he received a message from Turalion. Roger was amused and angered. The Graan, fearing the demons, had fled to southern Gorgrond, but after he eliminated the demons, they had reoccupied northern Gorgrond. Did they think he was their errand boy? These Graan, who bullied the weak and feared the strong, were simply courting death. He teleported directly to Everbloom Wilds and met with Turalion. Turalion pointed to the newly created map of Gorgrond. After the big explosion, the location of the demon fortress became a huge crater. In the crater, there are countless architectural fragments and demon creations, but even more black rock ore. The dwarves highly praise black rock ore, believing that weapons made from black rock ore will be better than the weapons we are currently using. Moreover, there is a lot of black rock ore, enough for us to use for 100 years. However, when I sent people to collect black rock ore, the soldiers encountered the Graan. To avoid conflict with the Graan, I withdrew. Then kill those Graan, Roger said with a murderous look. Turalion looked at him speechlessly. Rogers, don't just kill, kill, kill. The Graan are powerful. If we directly engage the Graan, we will sacrifice many soldiers. Roger glanced at him indifferently. Ordinary soldiers can't interfere in this war. I will personally send these Graan to hell. With that, Roger teleported away. Turalion was stunned for a moment, then sent someone to the crater while contacting Kadger. He regretted contacting Roger. He was too impulsive. Soon, Kadger teleported over. Turalion told Kadger about the situation, and Kadger said, perhaps Roger is right. Hey! Turalion looked at Kadger in surprise. How could you say that? You were also in favor of not starting a war with the Graan before. Kadger said, but now it's not up to us to decide, but the Graan want to seize our victory. If we don't let the Graan know how powerful we are, I'm afraid they will take an inch and want a mile. What's more, we do need black rock ore. Turalion was silent for a moment. He actually somewhat agreed with Roger's approach in his heart. The reason he didn't admit it before was because he was a little jealous of Roger, jealous as a rival in love. He believed that if it weren't for Roger, Alleria would be his wife, and they would definitely have a son. But now, he could only watch Roger and Alleria interact sweetly. How could he not be jealous? Chapter 119. Kadger teleported with Turalion to the mountaintop, and from afar, they saw dust billowing from the giant pit, a sure sign of a battle between powerful figures. Kadger summoned an arcane eye and directed it towards the battlefield. Through the arcane eye, Kadger clearly saw the two sides engaged in combat, Roger and 3 Graan. Roger's unpredictable offensive maneuvers left the 3 Graan disoriented, unable to even touch a finger of his. Conversely, Graan corpses already littered the vicinity of the battlefield. Clearly, the Graan were at a disadvantage. Kadger realized that Roger was toying with these 3 Graan. As for the reason for this teasing, he could probably guess. He redirected the arcane eye to observe the surroundings. Sure enough, on the southern land, a colossal Graan appeared at the edge of the pit, forcefully pounding the ground with both hands, roaring at Roger. Gruul! Roger looked up, a satisfied smile on his face. The reason he hadn't killed these 3 Graan until now was to await Gruul's appearance. Seeing Roger expose an opening, the Graan was overjoyed. One Graan leaped up, bringing both fists down on Roger. Boom! The Graan's fist slammed into the ground, but it didn't feel like it hit anyone. He lifted his fist in confusion, only to see shattered stones on the ground, but no sign of Roger's body. Fool! Roger's voice echoed from behind the Gron. Just now, he had teleported directly to the sky behind the Gron. Now, taking advantage of gravity, he dove down, the demon bane sword piercing directly into the Gron's spine. Stepping on the Gron's back, Roger forcefully pulled the demon bane sword, directly slicing open the Gron's spine. The other two Gron hurriedly charged forward, raising their fists to drive Roger away. Roger lightly dodged, and the Gron's fist slammed into his companion's back. The Gron with the shattered spine suffered a heavy blow from his companion, instantly breaking his spine and collapsing to the ground, unable to move. Roger leaped up, unleashing an arcane barrage at the fallen Gron. Arcane missiles imbued with divinity pierced through the wound and into the Gron's body, blasting apart his internal organs. As a semi-elemental creature, the Gron's internal organs were still a fatal weakness. Using the recoil of the arcane barrage, Roger jumped onto the shoulders of another Gron. The Gron fearfully flailed his arms, trying to drive Roger away. But everything he did was in vain. Roger plunged the demon bane sword into his neck, quickly twisting it around, and the Gron's massive head slid off his shoulders and onto the ground. The remaining Gron was terrified and turned to run towards the edge of the pit. His leader, the great dragon slayer Gruul, was there and could surely stop this ant-like human. Gruul also charged down to the edge of the pit. He couldn't stand by and watch Roger slaughter his people. He was, after all, the famous dragon slayer, having slaughtered countless black dragons, a being even Deathwing had to avoid. The Gron ran extremely fast, and it looked like Gruul was about to join up with the Gron. But suddenly, a spatial rift appeared in front of the Gron, and the Gron, unprepared, ran straight into it. Just as half of his body entered, the spatial rift closed, slicing the Gron in half. Roger lowered the scepter of Sargeras, sneering, trying to escape? Not so easy. Gruul looked at the two halves of the corpse on the ground, enraged beyond measure. He roared and charged towards Roger. Damn human, I'll make you pay with blood. Roger slammed the scepter into the ground, shouting, Gruul, who gave you the courage to steal my spoils of war? If demons can drive you away, can't I do the same? Gruul didn't take Roger's words to heart. He only had one thought, to kill this insect before him and then kill all the insects who dared to invade Gorgrond. Humph! Roger snorted coldly, using arcane hand to grab a large rock and hurl it at Gruul. Gruul raised his arm, and the boulder smashed against it, shattering into pieces. Such an attack couldn't harm Gruul, but it completely ignited Gruul's ferocity. While running, he grabbed stones from the ground and casually threw them at Roger. Even though it was a casual throw, Gruul's immense power was fully displayed at this moment. The rock traveled like a cannonball, reaching Roger in the blink of an eye. Roger didn't dodge, erecting an arcane barrier, which blocked the rock, but his arcane barrier also collapsed under the attack of the rock. Gruul seized the opportunity to rush forward, leaping into the air and using his body as a weapon to slam into Roger. Die, you vermin! A murderous glint flashed in Roger's eyes as he raised the scepter and cast a spell on Gruul Levitate. Gruul paused in mid-air, trying to force himself down, but he couldn't fall no matter what. He was suspended in the air by Roger's spell, unable to descend. Of course, he couldn't come down. Roger was constantly maintaining the spell, and a spell cast with divine power wasn't so easily broken. Of course, making a mountain-sized being like Gruul float wasn't an easy task either. Roger had to constantly maintain the spell. However, once Gruul was controlled, everything was in Roger's hands. Gruul didn't realize the gravity of the situation. He was still struggling, constantly shouting and threatening to give Roger, the vermin, a good beating. Roger sneered, I'll give you a little something first. With that, Roger cast Arcane Hand, gathering the surrounding black stone ore. Then, he spewed flames to melt the black stone ore, using shaping spells to create a giant sword. Roger thrust the sword upside down into the ground and then levitated Gruul above the giant sword. Intensifying the power of the levitate spell, Gruul rapidly ascended, and after reaching a certain height, Roger suddenly released most of the spell's power, and Gruul's massive weight caused a freefall. Gruul was finally afraid. He struggled in the air, trying to move to the side to avoid the giant sword. But Roger's levitate spell was still acting on him, and no matter how Gruul moved, he couldn't avoid the giant sword. Pfft! The giant sword pierced through Gruul's body, hanging him on it. Blood flowed continuously, and Gruul still tried to grab the giant sword to climb down, but Roger didn't give him a chance. 4 arcane hands grabbed Gruul's limbs, allowing Gruul to bleed to death. The so-called powerful dragon slayer was now slaughtered by Roger like a chicken. Gruul's death intimidated the remaining Graan. From then on, the Graan dared not enter the area of the giant pit again. Moreover, even if the Allied forces charged into the Graan's sphere of influence, the Graan dared not attack the Allied forces. The impression Roger had left on them was too profound, causing them to abandon their nature of monopolizing territory. Chapter 120. Without Goran's obstruction, the Allied forces quickly occupied most of Gorgrond. The collection of black rock ore also proceeded very smoothly. This black rock ore was transported to the Arvis and put into the magic furnace to be refined into black rock ingots, which were then sent to various alliance strongholds to be forged into weapons. With black rock weapons, the alliance's combat power was enhanced. Velan and Turalion discussed the matter and sent Dallas to Zungar Marsh to support Nubitan. Dallas brought a large number of black rock weapons, making it easier for the Allied forces to kill demons. Soon, the demons could not withstand the attack and retreated from around Serpent Lake. After occupying Serpent Lake, Nubitan and Dallas began to deal with purifying Serpent Bloom Valley. The alliance also began to advance into Frostfire Ridge. As the last piece of land in Draenor, Frostfire Ridge's harsh climate was the biggest obstacle to the alliance's advance. Before advancing into Frostfire Ridge, the Allied forces collected a large amount of fur to make enough cold weather clothing before starting their advance. Even so, many soldiers were still frostbitten. The harsh weather did not stop the Allied forces' belief in eliminating demons. The Allied forces quickly occupied the eastern part of Frostfire Ridge. The remaining western part was occupied by a large number of demons. The Allied forces prepared to mobilize all warships to launch a final attack on the demons. The Burning Legion had already obtained what they wanted in Draenor and had temporarily abandoned this place. Without reinforcements, the demons were no match for the Allied forces. The Allied forces rushed to the dark portal like a hot knife through butter, preparing to completely end the war. The demons kept fleeing towards the dark portal, wanting to escape back to the twisting nether. Just then, the spatial vortex of the dark portal suddenly changed color. A battle axe passed through the dark portal, splitting a demon guard in half. Then the owner of the axe passed through the dark portal, a strong and murderous orc. The Allied forces stopped, looking at the orc holding the axe and shouting with surprise and uncertainty. Grommash Hellscream! All the Allied soldiers were surprised and uncertain. Wasn't Grommash dead? How could he appear here? Countless orcs rushed through the dark portal, wiping out all the demons in one charge. Then they looked at the alliance, their eyes filled with ferocity. Grommash roared, "Reclaim our land! The Iron Horde will never be slaves! Kill!" The orcs charged towards the Allied forces, and the Allied soldiers panicked. The number of orcs far exceeded them, and they would surely die if they charged down from a high position. Defense! Dallas shouted loudly, commanding the soldiers to form a shield wall. Running away now would only lead to a massacre by the orcs. Defending in place and waiting for rescue might offer a glimmer of hope. He led the paladins to cast holy fire on the orcs' charge route, attempting to stop their charge. But the orcs bravely rushed into the flames, enduring the burning of the holy fire, and reached the front of the Allied forces. Bang! Bang! The orcs slammed heavily into the Allied forces' shields, shattering the shield wall. Then they raised their weapons and continuously slashed at the Allied soldiers. But the continuous stream of orcs did not give the Allied forces a chance. They quickly rushed up, knocking the soldiers down again, and then used their powerful strength to pin the Allied soldiers to the ground. The orcs who followed up continuously attacked these fallen Allied forces, and soon there were casualties. Dallas cut down an orc, and looking at the dead and wounded soldiers on the ground, a roar appeared in his mind. Just now he was still secretly pleased to be the first to rush to the dark portal, but he didn't expect it to be a case of rejoicing too soon. Velan, Turalion, Rogers, where are you? Boom! An explosion rang out from among the orcs, interrupting their charge. Then a figure appeared in the Allied forces camp, raising his hand and unleashing a barrage of spells at the orcs, killing all those who were attacking the Allied soldiers. Rogers! Dallas looked at Rogers, who had suddenly appeared, with surprise. Take the men and retreat first. Rogers said to Dallas, Turalion and the others are on their way. Dallas quickly organized the soldiers to retreat, and before leaving, he said to Rogers, I just saw Grommash. He's actually been resurrected. He's not resurrected. Rogers said in a deep voice, he comes from another timeline. Dallas was stunned, he didn't understand Roger's words. But Rogers had already turned his head to focus on dealing with the orcs, and Dallas could only retreat first. Grommash was furious when he saw Rogers blocking the orcs' attack by himself. He quickly rushed towards Rogers, stepping on a rock and jumping up, Bloodhowl raised high and down on Rogers' head. Rogers raised a finger, and Levitate blocked Grommash in the air. No matter how strong Grommash was, could he be stronger than Gruul? With no allied soldiers around, Rogers could use his powers freely. Arcane Explosion directly cleared out a group of orcs. Arcane Hand grabbed Grommash from the air and threw him onto a large rock. With a raise of his hand, the 4 elemental spirits appeared beside Rogers and launched an attack on the orcs. Rogers' rampage quickly attracted the attention of some interested people. On the mountain in front of the dark portal, 2 orcs had serious expressions. Is he the orc slayer you mentioned? His strength is indeed very strong. He's not just strong. If you're not careful, you might die in his hands. With his hatred for orcs, if he knew your identity, you would surely die. I will kill him before that. The younger orc sneered and raised a torch, waving it behind him. Some orcs immediately returned to the dark portal, and soon pulled a huge trebuchet out of the dark portal. The orcs adjusted it and then cut the trebuchet's rope. The trebuchet's wheels quickly spun, and a wheel bomb with flames was launched towards Rogers. Rogers smiled disdainfully and Arcane Hand grabbed a stone and threw it over. Boom! The bomb exploded in the air, and flames rained down from the sky, blocking Rogers' view. Now! With a loud roar, a group of powerful orc warriors charged towards Rogers. But when they rushed into the sea of fire, they lost sight of Rogers. I'm here! Following the shout, the orcs found Rogers on a nearby hilltop. Rogers looked at the orcs below. Karaz Dormu. I know you're here. You better take your pets and leave this world immediately, otherwise, I don't care if you're a bronze dragon or an infinite dragon, I will kill you with my own hands. Karaz Dormu did not show up, only the orcs' shouts answered him, Iron Horde, never slaves. Rogers sneered, I will let you know why they call me the Orc Slayer.